you're in Vegas, standing on the side of a road, and you about lose your head by some roadside equipment that detached from a truck.
Somebody saying to me, "You've been struck," and then just like blacking out, I'm probably gonna die. I'm standing on the sidewalk, and this truck was driving by towing a trailer, and the trailer came off and went up on the sidewalk and ran me over and just hit me right in the face, like 40 miles an hour.
Holy
shit.
Shit.
Hit me right here and fractured my skull and broke like every bone in my face, knocked me unconscious, and I'm thinking I'm gonna die.
Andrew, we're going to have a conversation. You've accomplished quite a bit of things throughout your life so far at this young age of, what'd you say, 36?
38.
38. I was going to cut off a couple of years for you.
Man, I appreciate it.
You served in the United States Marine Corps, did some deployments overseas. During that time, you and one of your best friends come from the same area. He ended up, unfortunately, getting killed in Afghanistan. Hit you pretty hard. You end up doing your time, getting out. You end up becoming a law enforcement officer, serving many years as a cop until last year you actually almost ended up getting decapitated in Vegas by some roadside equipment that detached from a truck, ending your career as a law enforcement officer. During this whole entire time, you have now started this docu-series about your best friend that ended up being killed in Afghanistan. Now you're traveling and interviewing his family. One of my best friends was yours, Dom. He's one of our OGs, on the episode, which is how we've gotten connected. So you have a lot of things that you're working on right now as far as being able to highlight one of your best friends' lives and who he was, and talking to guys that were in his truck and on his deployment or in his unit and things like that. So I want to cover some really cool stuff over this conversation, especially military, law enforcement, and then what you're doing now, because I find it really, it's a really honorable thing that you're doing to be able to highlight your best friend all these years later in making this documentary that is going to highlight who he was, his life, and all his friends and family and everybody that were involved in who his whole entire journey up into joining and serving his country and obviously paying the ultimate sacrifice. So it's a really cool thing that you're doing, because there's a lot of guys that get stuck in that survivor's guilt. Should have been me, lost my best friend, because I've dealt with vets for so many years through our organization, and it really ruins a lot of guys and they hang on to this. But you're turning this into something that's really interesting as far as being able to highlight somebody. Instead of dwelling on it, you're like, hey, I'm going to show the world who my best friend was. And that's an awesome thing. And that's why I really want to dive into that. So, true fashion of the Wild Chaos podcast, man. Who are you? Where are you from?
Yes, my name is Andrew Coville. I'm from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Born and raised there. Lived there until I joined the Marine Corps in 2006 with Nick Exaros, who we were just talking about there. We left to go to boot camp on June 19th, 2006, a week after graduating high school.
No shit. You guys were ready then. So you're signed up, ready to go as seniors.
Yeah. So Nick and I were very different people in high school. He was kind of like that guy that, like, I don't know, class president type guy.
Okay.
Everybody loved him. Nothing arrogant about the guy ever. He was just, everybody loved him. He brought everyone around him up. I actually went to night school in high school for my junior and senior year, because I was doing construction during the day.
Okay.
And him and I, we knew each other, but we were kind of different circles of people. And then I was going to join the Army. Because back then the recruiters would call your house and they'd be like, especially when you're junior, senior year, they're looking for people to sign up. Yep. And they call and they said, hey, are you interested in joining the Army? I was like, yeah, I am. I always wanted to serve. My dad was in the Navy, instilled that in me really young, service. And when I was a kid, I was the one who was like playing with Army action figures, all that stuff, shooting guns out in the woods, all that. So the Army recruiter comes to my house, talks to me and my mom, and I'm like, yeah, I'm interested in this. Let's set up another meeting. I go down to the recruiting station, which has like the Army, the Navy, all of them in one, in this little narrow hallway. And I go in there and I'm going to meet the Army recruiter. The Marine Corps office is right down the road, and the recruiter pops his head out and he's like, basically says like, hey, why don't you quit being a pussy and join the Marines?
Sounds about right.
And then a bunch of laughter comes from the room, and I see one of the kids in there is Nick. Yeah, because I already, like I said, I already knew him, but we weren't like
in each other's circle.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So I was like, yeah, you got a point. So then I joined the Marines.
No shit.
So then Nick and I, we became really good friends after that.
Okay.
And
well, there's kind of this, I don't want to say trauma bond, but a pulley bond.
Yeah.
You both have this extreme common, you goal of joining the military, and especially the Marine Corps. So that brings you together. They could probably have been a trench coat kid and then a jock, and you guys know that you're joining and now you're pulleys together. There's that immediate bond.
Totally.
Because you start forgetting about titles and all that bullshit from high school. It's like, hey, we're gonna do this together.
And that's what it turned into. And, you know, we were in that delayed entry program as poolies, doing the PT, going on like field trips to New Hampshire to basically like play boot camp with the other poolies from all across New England. And, you know, like high school is a very confusing and difficult time for everybody, right? Like,
for sure.
And now I can't even imagine it's probably even more confusing and difficult. But I feel like back then, a lot of kids, including myself, you don't really know who you are. You know what I mean? You're like a complete product of whatever environment you're in, whatever circle you're in. But Nick was that guy who knew exactly who he was. You know, he had conviction, he had vision. He just had that about him at like a really young age. And in a lot of ways, joining that delayed entry program and having him there, I was like, all right, if this guy's doing this, then I can do it too. And I had my own autonomy and all that stuff. I'm not saying that I was completely following him into it, but him being there with me definitely made it seem like something that was less scary. At 16 years old, 17 years old, however we were when we actually joined. And
were you guys on a battle or a buddy program together? Or you just, okay. Oh, so you, which is really cool. I never even knew about it, but I've learned obviously,
it's a
bunch
of bullshit.
Well, some guys like went in and did their whole entire like first 4 years together on the or on the buddy program, which is really cool. But that, for people listening, if you're joining out of the same recruiting station, they'll partner you with people and you go to boot camp together and you kind of, there obviously people separate, but so it's a really cool thing. So to be able to do that with a friend, because it's, bro, joining the military is, looking back at it now, it's, you're like, holy shit, we weren't prepped for anything. I mean, for me at least, it's not like we're YouTubing and Googling, what's the Marine Corps like? Like, what's boot camp like?
No, the only thing you know is asking other people you knew. Like
for
kids who are a grade or two ahead of us and were in the Marines, you'd ask them and they'd make it sound like it was the craziest thing ever. You know? And you got to remember too, this was 2006. So Fallujah was 2 years before that.
Yep.
You had Ramadi going on in there. So the Marine Corps there was two wars going on between Iraq and Afghanistan. With Iraq being the one that was certainly more highlighted at the time.
Yep.
And we knew that. We wanted to be part of it. I mean, there was a guy in a couple classes above us who had been in Ramadi in 2005, came back, told us all about him. We're like, yeah, that's what we want to do. So we both joined as O3s, open contract.
That's risky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you join as an O3 and then you get designated your MOS in infantry
Got it.
school.
Yeah.
So we were O3's contract, but it's an open MOS.
You can go mortars, you can go LA or LAR, whatever, all the LAV, whatever.
Yep. All the O3 MOSs. So we leave to go to boot camp on June 19th and we get down there and the first week in boot camp is like a receiving week. Like, you know, it's, they shave your head and you keep you up for 3 days straight and you meet these drill instructors that are like receiving drill instructors, but you're not actually placed in a platoon yet.
Yep.
During that processing week, we were in the squad bay one day and a drill instructor yells Nick's name, Exaros, and he runs up, goes to the front. And then later that day, after I'd continued on with the processing stuff, he comes back like super pissed, looks like devastated. And he tells me he has a bee allergy that he disclosed to the recruiter, but the recruiter didn't put it in his file. So then they found it out when he got to boot camp and they're putting him in a med hold platoon. So our buddy program's gone right there because I keep going and he's stuck, you know, so for all he knew, he was going to get discharged.
Oh, that's gotta be a horrible feeling.
Yeah. And then like now I'm kind of all alone too.
Yep.
So it was mixed feelings all around. And then I continue on with boot camp. He's in this med hold platoon. I don't know or see him. It's not like you talk to the recruits unless they're in your immediate vicinity.
Yep.
And about halfway through boot camp, I start getting this like throbbing pain in my groin area. And I'm just like, you know, in boot camp, you don't want to ever say that you're hurt because you go to EAS, now you're dropped from your platoon and you got to start the whole thing over. It's just a mess. So I just powered through it and I was just like limping around. As time went on, I started really favoring the other leg and then that one started getting the same pain too. And then after the crucible, I was in a formation run and I just felt a pop and then I couldn't run anymore. It was
You're talking
done.
hips, legs, joints,
My hips,
where?
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So my drill instructor, they knew I was hurt, but they were trying to kind of like carry me through because I made it through all the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, you have to go to BAS, which is sick call. I get into sick call. They're like, all right, stand on one leg and hop. I couldn't do it. I was like in so much pain. I was almost crying. They're like, they send me through to have x-rays. And they're like, you have to have immediate hip surgery. Both of your femoral necks and your hip have cracks in them. They're broken.
What?
Yeah.
From what though?
Just stress fractures, just from doing the hikes, the humps, the whatever, just repeated pressure on it.
Brutal.
Oh, it was brutal. I was devastated. And I was a week from graduation, not even a week, days. My family was already on their way down. They had no idea. So my mom gets off the plane in South Carolina, excited to see me graduate, and flips her phone. Back then, there's no iPhones. It was you know, flip phones, and has multiple voicemails from some Marine saying, your son is going in for surgery. So she went down there thinking this, I'm about to watch my son graduate boot camp. Nick's family was down there. They weren't down there yet. He ended up being a week behind me. So after that whole med hold thing, it got sorted out. He was graduating pretty close to me. So they get down there and they come and see me in the hospital. I wake up from surgery and my family's there. And then my drill instructors came in and gave me my EGA and like a ceremony in the hospital bed. It's crazy.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it was like, I never walked across the parade deck except for the
You didn't do any of the ceremony or anything?
No, I never even seen one until in January. I went to my nephew's, who just graduated boot camp. That was the first time I'd been on that parade deck.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And you're a Parris Island Marine. So, I mean, that's fascinating. I've never even heard of anybody not walking across, but still getting your EGA.
Yeah. Cause I finished all the stuff that you had to. The only thing I didn't do was the graduation ceremony. So it was a unique situation. And then they put me in a med hold platoon, not even a med hold platoon. I was in the hospital in Beaufort, recovering, doing PT just on my own. It was miserable.
How long did that go on?
I was in the hospital for probably a month and a half post-surgery. And in that time, Nick came to visit me when he graduated. Him and his whole family came. And he went on to the infantry school while I stayed there, broken in this hospital. It's terrible. But I was in the hospital for probably a month and a half in Beaufort. And then I got moved back to Parris Island to what they call a basic Marine platoon, which is like a bunch of just broke Marines, some of which they like kind of like my situation where they graduated, but they were too broken to go on to their MOS schools. And it was terrible. It was just full of people that were like basically looking for a way out of the Marines, you know? And so I was like, I'm going to PT until I get out of here. So you had to do a PFT in whatever the parameters were at the time, you know, the 3 miles and the pull-ups and the sit-ups and all that, just to get out. And
that was your goal?
Yeah. And they tried to make me switch my MOS too, because they're like, if you go 03 and go to SOI, there's a high likelihood you'll break your hips again. Because after the surgery, I had 3 steel or titanium pins, I don't know, in both femoral next to my hip, so where it connects at the joint. And I was like, if I can pass a PFT, I'm keeping this MOS. And then I did. Went to SOI, and luckily they never broke again.
No shit. What was the time from leaving Parris Island to SOI until you're back in a school again? What was your recovery time?
So my hips, the surgery was probably September 1st, say. It was close to that. And I was in SOI by January.
Damn, that's a quick turnaround, because SOI is not an easy, I mean, dude, school of infantry. So you guys
harder than boot camp.
Yeah, that's what, and so you didn't have any issues there, huh?
No, luckily. I mean, when you're 18 years old, you're invincible.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know, maybe some luck, but I just didn't have any issues. It didn't even, I mean, it hurt still, but I had some lingering issues that showed up because of the inactivity. Like I had like Achilles tendonitis came because I was in a hospital bed for a while, and I went straight to infantry school. But I got through it all and graduated SOI, and then Nick and I ended up meeting back up in the fleet. We both went to Camp.
Okay, that was my next question. Did you guys link back up because he's obviously still in SOI, just ahead of you a month or two. Yeah. Did you guys meet? But he's obviously 2 different classes now.
Yeah, he was probably like 2 months ahead of me.
Okay.
And so when I was in SOI, he was in the fleet, and you know, the fleet is this like mythical thing. Wait till you get to the fleet, you know?
Yeah.
So I was getting like inside info about SOI from him and about the fleet. And then eventually when you're in SOI, you start getting Liberty on the weekend. So I would go on to Camp Lejeune and hang out with them, and like it was kind of cool to have that element of it. So I got a taste of what that place would be like before actually getting there, which I don't think a lot of other people had at the time. So I end up graduating. He's already with 1st Battalion, 9th Marines on Camp Lejeune. I go to 2nd Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion because I was it's called an 0352 MOS. It's anti-armor. We shoot tow guns and javelins. And they use them on the LAVs a lot. So they send a lot of the infantry guys there, along with like 0311s and others, to do 0311 stuff. Yep. But so anyway, we meet back up on Camp Lejeune, and then we're just living that Marine Corps life. Just 19-year-old kids, you know. What
was that like? What year was this? 2006?
It's 2006. By the time I got to the fleet, it's 2007.
Okay, so 2007, young Marines. What's life like for you?
You're just like trying to survive, you know. You got like senior guys that are all salty Iraq vets,
war vets. Yeah. And the reason I ask is I was one. That was my generation. So my last deployment was 2007, and then we got a big boot drop. So it'd be equivalent to picking you guys up. So what was it like from your point of view joining the fleet, and you just got war dogs that are stacked. I mean, you got Fallujah Marines, you got Ramadi Marines. I mean, you have all of these historic battles that have gone on that you've watched as a child, and now these are your seniors. I mean, you're looking at dudes that got stacks on them.
Yeah. Well, when I got to my unit, they were still deployed in Iraq.
Okay.
So they have what they call the remain behind element, which is like short timers,
broke dicks, everybody
and people that like, you know, somehow managed to get out of deploying.
Yep. The turds.
Yeah. So I get to that and I'm like, ooh, this isn't too bad.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone's
I had
like,
the same experience.
They're like, oh, well, they're coming back in, 2 months. So things are going to get a lot different. They're going to shuffle everybody around. And then that's what happened. They came back and it was just a totally different Marine Corps. It was, there was still an element of that, like, I don't want to say hazing, but kind of, Marine Corps culture, but it wasn't, it was mixed in with a lot of short timers that were kind of just like, I want to do my thing and get out of here.
Yeah.
So when they came back, and then it was that whole, like, crazy field days and, doing squad rushes in the quad instead of eating lunch because someone showed up to formation not 15 minutes early. They were like, just the crazy stuff that goes on in the Marine Corps, which is all part of it. But you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time. You're just like,
for sure,
someone's pissed off about something all the time.
For sure.
It's a common occurrence to hear a grown man screaming at another grown man at the top of his lungs because he had like his hands in his pockets or something. It's wild. It's an interesting culture to say the least.
I'll never forget the time that I got lifed out on the rifle range in the pitch black, in the fog. We're standing there for like 4 hours. I don't even know why we were there so early. And I had my hands in my pockets. And this dude, I swear to God, he repelled out of this guy and just like straight lifed me out, knife hand, everything. And he's like, you fucking cold, Marine? I'm like, yes, it's freezing. Like, and he's chewing my ass for having my hands in my pockets. But just this shit like that. I'm like, dude, your life is that miserable right now. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. We're standing on this misty ass range, 3 hours till the sun's up. Like, yeah, I'm gonna stand in the pitch black with my hands in my pocket, but nope.
Yeah,
someone shitting his Cheerios that morning and he found me.
It's crazy. And I mean, I think that's like what makes the Marine Corps
for sure.
You keep everyone just pissed off all the time.
That's what I feel a huge separation between us and the Army. The Army seems much happier than us.
Yeah for sure. And the Marine Corps is just, I mean, you could go on forever about that culture and the craziness that goes on, and it varies from unit to unit too, like 100%. Every unit has its own culture and ways of doing things. And, your life is just completely in the control of whoever your command is. Like you have a new platoon sergeant comes in who loves to run. Well, guess what?
You're all runners.
You're
now.
Running.
Oh.
So
you got an Arnold guy that used to worship Arnold. Guess what? Everybody's doing freaking ammo can lifts and buddy drag. Yeah.
There's no like, you're not in a union. It's like you're just completely at the mercy of whoever's in charge of you. And that could be some Lance Corporal who's like 22 but did a deployment and now he just wants to make your life miserable.
I don't know if there's even a way to articulate the culture of, and I'll just speak for the Marine Corps, because like you're saying, each unit has its own vibe depending on the tempo of the unit and the leadership of the unit, how senior and salty dudes are. You could go leave that unit, come back a month later, it's a completely different unit.
Totally.
And you'd be like, what the fuck? You guys aren't doing this, this, and this. And they're like, dude, life's been great. And you're like, man, I've wanted out of here for my whole entire career. And then now you get a new sergeant major and the guy comes from the air wing and he's like, we're getting off early on Fridays and we're going to do this and we're going to go on walks on the beach. You're like, oh, this is great. But and that could change for the next month. You get another guy in and it is the most fascinating place to try to adapt, overcome, just fit in, figure out what's going on. Somebody gets hurt. That's a whole entire shit show. And everything's a knee-jerk reaction. So nobody ever just sits and thinks like, okay, guys, this guy screwed up really bad. How do we fix the situation? It's like, everybody's paying for it. And you're like,
yeah,
well, here we are again.
Constant anxiety-inducing series of events. But to get back to what you asked, what it was like, that life with Nick down there, there was fun parts too, because you're dealing with all of that stress all the time. And it's not all bad all the time. I know we're making jokes about it, but a good amount of the time it is. Mm-hmm. But because of that, you go on the weekends and you want to release. You want to like go out and be kids, basically.
So you party hard.
Yeah. So we're drinking beers, going down to Wilmington, North Carolina. Sometimes we just hang out on base and just get hammered in the barracks. You're just doing Marine stuff, just kid stuff. I mean, you got to remember too, we're 19, 20 years old. It's our first time away from home.
Money,
some money, but yeah. You think you're invincible,
mm-hmm.
right? You think like, cause you have this title Marine, you forget that the whole entire coastal Carolina area is full of them. So it's like you go out, you're nothing special, but you think you are.
Yep.
And that's part of it. And that bravado is what makes Marines.
100%.
And it's fun. And we would go out, and he was in 19. It was right down the road from me. All the infantry battalions are kind of like near each other.
Yeah.
So I would see him all the time. And then I had other friends too that were down there. And we just kept that up. And, that first like 6 months in the fleet, you're really just acclimating to it and like trying to see where you fit in and not mess up and kind of like dictate what your whole Marine Corps career is going to be.
Yep.
And then we got news that we were deploying to Iraq.
What year was this? Is still 2007?
This was 2008 by then.
Okay.
Yeah, we deployed to Iraq. So Nick and I didn't deploy together. He was, again, in 19. I was in 2nd LAR, but we both deployed at the same time. So it was like April to November, right over the summer.
Okay.
He went to Ramadi, and I went to it was a city called Rupa in this Camp Korean village. It was kind of like out in the middle of nowhere.
You went to Rupa?
Near it, yeah.
Okay.
We were outside of it.
We ended up taking
that was in our AO.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we weren't like in it all the time. I actually ended up living in this like what used to be a gas station along that highway that Rupa's on.
Yeah.
And training Iraqi police.
Interesting.
Yeah. But by then Iraq was on the tail end. So there was like no combat whatsoever when I was there.
Was that kind of a sketchy feeling? Because when I contract, we did in 2005, 2006, we were starting to train the Iraqi army and all those guys. And it was sketch then. And then when I got out, I went contracting in Afghan. And dude, you heard about it every week. There was one of the IAs or whatever shooting somebody in the back and turning. So you guys were mainly focused on the hearts and minds of training the Iraqis. Was that ever a threat or a problem for you guys?
I wouldn't say it really came off as a threat, but they were
Okay.
useless. One of them shot another one of them by accident, supposedly. They would go out on their own patrols, sometimes with us, sometimes without us. And one time they came back with a guy in the back of one of their pickups, and they're like, "Oh, he's sick. And they pulled the tarp. I was like, "Yes, dude's dead." Yeah. So there was like, I had no faith in them being able to do anything on their own. But at that point, though, it was like Iraq, especially the region we were in, and Iraq was still a very dangerous place.
Yeah.
It really just depended where you were and what you were doing. Where we were, it was not that kinetic fight anymore. We were basically police.
Yeah.
Going around and maintaining what had been fought very hard for the previous 5 years. And it was pretty monotonous and boring. And with that came us living with these Iraqi police, which was, a big culture shock for us. But
let's jump into that.
Yeah.
People, I talk about it here and there because I lived with a lot of them. They lived in our home. We had to build separate shitters for them because people don't realize that they squat and shit all over everything. And then they wash their ass with water bottles. So like your bathroom is just covered in liquid shit. Like they don't understand the culture differences and what it's like living in a war zone with people that don't have the same hygiene. Were you guys dealing with that stuff?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They had their own little compound and we had our own little compound.
Oh, so you guys were separated.
We were separated, but the place we were at was like a very small outpost.
Okay.
So we were separated, but not really. Like we were standing post with them. We were with them all the time. But we tried to keep separation as best we could. And the cultural differences, all the ones you just listed. So we tried to like keep that in their own space. And then once in a while we'd eat with them and stuff. But excuse me, we tried to keep our distance, it was, and none of them spoke English and I didn't speak whatever language they were speaking at the time. I can't even remember what it is anymore. But, so it's like, it wasn't something I made any effort whatsoever to become friends with them.
Yeah. How long was that deployment for you guys?
7 months.
Okay. So 7 months and you're out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, we were living in somewhat of, like austere conditions when we were living with the Iraqi police out on our own. But then we would go back to like this bigger base and everyone's just lifting weights and there's a chow hall. And it wasn't what I would think a war would be at all.
So it had some normalcy.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. It was not like the war that I had signed up for. Let's put it that way.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then Nick had gone to Ramadi and I wasn't in Ramadi, so I can't speak on it. But by then it was stabilized too from the previous, few years of the Marines fighting it out in there.
Yep.
And within the first 2 weeks of his deployment, there was a suicide truck that came through a checkpoint and blew up an entire city block. And it was actually Dom's battalion, that 2-8, that they relieved. So one of the guys from 19 was killed in the blast, and then a guy from 2-8 was killed in the blast. And Nick was in the outpost where the blast happened. And those two Marines stayed in their post and shot at this truck as it came at him and stopped it and saved the lives of 150 other Marines.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Damn. How bad were the IEDs at your time during this era? Did it start to slow down because the more insurgents were moving back toward the major cities, or was it still a threat? Like every time you guys leaving the wire, are you worrying about it?
No, it was, I mean, it was still a threat, but it was not something that was, I don't think we dealt with one the entire time we were there.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Damn.
The way Iraq was by the time I got there was just like breeding complacency. You know what I mean? They had those KBR chow halls with Ugandans working at them. They had gyms. It just didn't feel like a war at all. And we would patrol, like you'd get a little taste of it. You go out into the cities and like, you'd be like, oh wow, you can tell something happened here for the last few years, but I must've missed it.
Yeah.
So it was very anticlimactic is the best word I can think to describe it. But it was just enough to be like, I deployed and you didn't when I came back and a new boot drop came in.
Yeah.
So you at least get a little bit of that saltiness.
For sure.
But I didn't realize how lucky we were that we deployed and came back with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I had no idea what the alternative could be because you do so much training in the Marine Corps. You go to, and you're training for the desert back then. That's the only place Marines went. So then you go to a place like Iraq, it almost just feels like an extension of that training. Like it doesn't feel like war.
Oh, see, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. You know, I mean, obviously they've spent billions of dollars building out these little castle towns and little mock areas of training to be able to replicate us stepping into a theater like Iraq or Afghanistan. But at the same time, are we going into these at your guys' age or era? Were you guys going into them almost too complacent because things are starting to wind down? Like us, you're just getting fed. Like,
yeah,
you know, the guys that came back and picked us up as a boot drop, they were in a formation. I mean, they lost half their platoon to a V bid. So when they picked us up, it was hell because they wanted to get us spun up to that level. So we were like on eggshells going over there versus you guys are like, all right, well, fuck, this is the same thing.
Well, I didn't go over there with that mindset. It was more like after a couple months of being there. It was
it.
like, this is just kind of business as usual. And it was just because of what the situation was.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like there was no discipline or that mentality. It's just, it's hard. You do anything long enough, it becomes normal.
Absolutely.
And that's what that was. And you just felt like, all right, well, I must have missed the war. So you kind of just accepted that. And then you just, you know, you obviously hope nothing happened, but at the same time, you're kind of hoping something does because you want that combat action ribbon. You know, you're a Marine, especially in Marine infantry. It's what you signed up for.
Yeah. So you guys get back, and how long until you guys were deployed again? Now, 2006, 2007, that's when Afghans really popping off.
Yeah. So when we went on this Iraq deployment, there was a platoon that they took from Bravo Company and 2nd LAR and sent on a MEU with 1st Battalion 6 Marines. That MEU ended up going straight to Helmand Province and went to Garmsir, where ultimately Nick ended up going, and just basically like poked around to see what was going on down there. And it was a war zone. It was crazy. So they spent their whole deployment in Garmsir. I think maybe the British were there at the time. I don't really know what the mission was for them, but then they ended up coming back. They got back from Afghanistan the same time we got back from Iraq, and they're telling stories of the Wild West. Like their deployment was very different than ours was. And most of these guys were in my SLI class, so I was good friends with them. So you're starting to hear Afghanistan be talked about more. Like there's stuff going on over there because it'd been kind of forgotten about, you know, because Iraq was the main focus of the Marine Corps for so long. And then you fast forward. So you do a deployment. Back then it was supposed to be you do 7 months in country, and then you come back and you have 14 months off, and then you just repeat that process over and over again. But in 2008, the Obama administration wanted to do a troop surge into Afghanistan and specifically push into the Helmand Province. So he assembled what was called a Marine Expeditionary Brigade. It was like approximately 11,000 Marines, sailors, Afghan national soldiers, and
it's a big movement.
Yeah. And then so they put that together to go basically take back the Helmand Province from the Taliban and all these areas that the British were just undermanned and under-equipped to hold.
Yeah.
And the idea was to go and stop the opium trade and to set up like a government and voting and all this stuff. And the plan was to do that by the Marines taking all this ground and holding it and then keeping it there.
If people listening, when you speak of the opium trade, the biggest reason why, and this is what we were always told, is we had to put such a stop to the opium trade because that's what was funding the Taliban, and that's what was bringing in all the weapons and everything else, knowing now that the CIA and everything, we were providing it. But that was the whole thing that we were pitched, was the opium's the major problem, because I had a bunch of buddies that went over there and they were just burning poppy fields.
Yeah,
and
us too.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into that. So you're getting all the word. Everyone, your other boys are coming back from Afghan. You came back from Iraq. Now Afghan's starting to become more on the radar. Iraq's pretty much done at that point. So now do you guys know that you're ramping up at this point, or is it just in hopes and dreams that you're going to get some time over in Afghan?
There was rumblings about it, and then we got official word that 2 companies from 2nd LAR were going to go. They were going to send a Delta company and Charlie company, and then a HNS headquarters support element. So probably like 600 Marines total compared to the full battalion, which would be 1,000. And because of that, they shuffled everything around. I got moved to Charlie company to go on the deployment. And as this was happening, Nick was still with 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, and their battalion was scheduled to go on a MEU, which is a Marine Expeditionary Unit. They like either float around the Mediterranean or they go train other places in the world. It's kind of like you're just on a ship. I don't really know. I've never done one.
I've done 2 MEUs. It's incredible.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. So him and his other buddy, his name was Q. He's a friend of mine too. They were in 19 together. They wanted to go on this Afghanistan deployment once they found out that it was a real thing. And Nick and I were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, I'm going in the spring. And so that's kind of is what it is. And they had made connections with 2-8, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines from when they relieved them in Iraq. And they found out that 2-8 was going, and they decided to, it's a crazy story, but they decided to walk over to 2-8, Q and Nick, asked to speak to the sergeant major, and then go in his office and say, we heard you're deploying to Afghanistan. We want to go with you. We're in 19 and scheduled to go on a MEU right now. And they got
that's ballsy.
Crazy story.
You don't do that as a troop in the Marine Corps. One, go talk to a sergeant major, or even just out of your chain of command in a whole different battalion.
And ask to leave your current battalion.
Yeah, that's ballsy for sure.
Crazy. It's crazy thinking about it now that they actually did that, but it worked.
Okay.
They went back to their unit, got chewed out for it, said they had no loyalty, blah, blah, blah. But then they ended up going to 2-8 and then going to Afghanistan. And
that was Dom on that deployment too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he ended up being in Dom's platoon.
Yep.
And I didn't know, he was telling me all this, that they were trying to do it, but by the time it actually came to fruition, I was already gone for Afghanistan.
Okay.
So I didn't know if he was going or not. And then the next time I saw him was probably late April, early May. We were all at Camp Leatherneck assembling this Marine Expeditionary Brigade to push south. And I'm just sitting in my tent, in these big ass, like miserable circus tent things they had there at Camp Leatherneck. And he comes through the back door and yells my name. He's like, Coville. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And then I turn around, it's him. He's there. And he's like, I made it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So then we hung out on Camp Leatherneck for like a month as all the planning happened to push south. And we just did like kind of trainings and, mock patrols and PT and just all this like busy work to prep for the mission that we really didn't know much about at the time, what was going on. Not at the, corporal level anyway.
No, need to know basis.
And yeah, we hung out, we took some pictures together, and that was the last time I ever saw Nick.
No shit.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys, obviously you're going on different missions. Are you close to each other in the region, or is this something that you guys are coming and seeing each other every day and then go out on a mission and come back, or you guys go off to the winds?
Once we left Camp Leatherneck, I never saw him again.
Okay.
Because he went to Garmsir, which the Helmand River Valley is this big river that runs down, and it curves into what they call a fishhook. Garmsir is like halfway down it probably. And then I was at this place called Khanjar, which was probably 30 to 40 kilometers below them. And we shared some of the same area of operations, but I never saw him.
Okay.
And, that deployment ended up being very intense. Like that was the war I was looking for.
So you got it.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was crazy. And I knew things were bad where we were, and you hear rumblings about other parts of the AO. And I heard that 2-8 in Garmsir was having a hell of a time. And because you have, I can't remember what it was called. It's Blue Force Tracker or something.
Yeah.
That screen where you can see what's going on in different areas.
Yep.
And you would just keep hearing about 2-8 having casualties. And, I put it in the back of my mind because we were dealing with our own stuff. But it was crazy. We got down there. The official start of the operation was July 2nd. It was called Operation Khanjar. It means strike of the sword in Arabic. I don't know who came up with the name, but that's what it was called.
Some general.
Yeah. And we get down there. We left because we were in the LAVs. So we pushed through the desert all night for 2 days, would set up security in the middle of the desert, and then start moving again, doing all night movements. And we get down there, and it's just like, it looks like 15th century peasant times. Like you can tell no one had been there in a long time, probably since the Russians in the 80s.
Oh, you're talking just any outside presence.
Any outside presence.
It's insane that I feel as Americans, we're so sheltered and privileged that in a lot of this country doesn't travel to certain parts of the world and don't realize how primitive people still live in major across the world. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to go to a lot of different countries, and that was one of those things. Like, you'd come over a little hill, middle of the desert, and there's a little compound. I mean, these people, one room, half the room's got a little fence in it. They got sheep and goats in the corner, and then everybody's mats are on the floor, and there's no running water, and you're just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, we're still living like this.
And then you got, 21-year-old me just plopped in there.
Trying to figure it out.
I don't think at that point I'd ever even besides Iraq, left the United States,
And here you are set back in time, like Genghis
crazy.
Khan time, because nothing's even, I've asked buddies, I have a buddy that's a big in the Marine Corps history and everything. I'm always, why are they like, nothing has evolved? I mean, I was in Kabul for a while contracting, and you can almost see the regression there.
Yeah.
From all the pictures on the embassy wall, and you'd see back in the 70s and 80s, and then you'd be like, well, what the hell happened here? But to truly go out into the depths of Afghan or Iraq and finding these villages, it's a huge step back in time. I mean, some of these people, they still have bloodlines from Genghis Khan, and I mean, Asian redheaded Afghanis that you're crossing. And you're like, that's interesting. Like, this dude is straight blonde haired, blue eye little Afghan girl or Iraq girl. And you're like, where did this come from?
Yeah, it was crazy. And there was no one where we were. There was no outpost, no British. So there was no cops, no forward operating bases, no combat outposts.
No shit.
So it was just us.
In your vehicles, operating out of your vehicles.
Sleeping on the ground or in the vehicles or setting up little makeshift combat outpost. And the operation started on July 2nd. And the next day, that's when all the fighting started.
No shit.
Yeah.
How did it go down?
It was almost like it trickled in. It was kind of weird because you're in that situation, but you're still kind of like, is this real? Like, are these guys really, is there people here that really want to kill us? And you're on high alert, but you just, I don't know, you're kind of in this like distorted sense of reality, I guess. And then, the first thing you start hearing gunshots, and then you start seeing these random explosions, and it takes you a minute to realize, oh wait, that's a mortar round. And the intention was to land on me, and you see those going on, and then you start hearing over the radio, different platoons taking contact at different times. And you're like, oh wow, this is real.
What's the terrain like for you guys?
It was, so anything along the Helmand River is very green, like surprisingly forest green, like really, a lot of places to hide. And then you get away from it, it's barren desert. But there's
rolling hills, or is it mountainous, or what is it like?
It's mostly rolling hills and open desert. And then off in the distance, you can see the Hindu Kush, the mountains.
Okay.
But we never were really close enough to them. But the terrain itself, I mean, anywhere near the Helmand River has just like wadis, which are like canals going around everywhere. So it would really limit your movement, especially us in LAVs, or even if you're in Humvees or MRAPs or whatever. It's like you really got to work around that stuff. And anytime we would get attacked would seem to be where they had us in some sort of like area where the vehicles were most limited. And it was just, I mean, it was interesting because, like I was saying earlier, you kind of like takes you a moment to realize it's real. And it's also like, there'll be stuff going on with the company, contact happening at different places, but it's not always involving you. So you're like hearing it on the radio, you know it's happening, but you're just like, it still doesn't seem real. And you still think like, there's no way any of us are going to get hurt, Like, this is just going to be another thing we get home and kind of talk about. And now we have another deployment under our belts.
For sure.
And that first week of operations was just absolutely insane. It was just nonstop, us trying to establish our presence there.
Are you in a urban environment, or is this little village hopping?
Little village hopping.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like, everything was just mud buildings with
like little compounds.
With mud, compacted mud walls around them.
Yep.
They were super thick too. They were like, they could take a lot of damage before you could get through those things.
Oh yeah. They've had nothing but time to reinforce walls over there.
Yeah. And the Taliban, like I only saw them in person that I know of one time. Like it was like fighting ghosts, they would fight from a distance. And they would usually do like some sort of combined small arms and mortar attack, or rockets too, RPGs. And then they'd just get out of there. So like we as Marines would return with like a massive amount of firepower, but they'd already be gone.
Yep.
And it was kind of just like that repeatedly. The only time during that first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it was kinetic fighting, like what you would think combat would be, because they actually wanted to fight with us, I guess, and like kind of see what capabilities we have and limitations and all that. And I think it was on July 6th, we had gone on this patrol, And we were sitting around this big village that had a wall around it. It was like a big compound kind of near one of the wadis. And I was the vehicle commander of my vehicle, so I'm sticking out the top and I have a 240 in front of me and I'm talking to the other platoon commanders and all this stuff, or the vehicle commanders. And there were these two guys that were just standing there watching us. And it was so early in the deployment, I didn't think like, oh, these guys are definitely a problem. They just look like any other locals.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, they're probably getting water or whatever the hell they're doing. And we had come in on one road, excuse me. And because we were limited with our vehicles on where we could go, we could only go out on that road. We sat there, did nothing for like 5 hours, sweating our balls off, like mind-numbingly boring, just smoking cigarettes and drinking hot water.
Scalding hot water.
Yeah, and then we get word to leave, and when we're on our way out, we get in a complex ambush. My vehicle was caught in the middle of the kill zone, and like I don't even remember, but 3 or 4 mortar rounds landed right next to it, like 15 feet next to it, rocked my vehicle, and then small arms opened up and started pinging off the vehicle and all this stuff, and we ended up being stuck in that for a little while as the other parts of the company maneuvered around to like get it under control. But ultimately we ended up dislodging this position using a tow missile.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it was like I said earlier, where like there'd be stuff going on, but it wasn't always you know, but this was my turn basically. Like this was the first time I was really in something where I thought I'm probably going to die.
Oh shit.
Yeah. It was crazy.
I mean, mortar rounds hitting that close, that's rocking you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they opened up with small arms fire too. So it was like, it was coming from this compound and you can't really see where it's coming from. And it was just like chaos. It was the first time I really tasted combat.
How did you process that? Do you remember? Did you slow down? Was it just 100 miles an hour? When you first, I mean, because everybody processes obviously that situation differently for the first few times until you find a groove, and then almost some guys thrive in that. But in that situation, was it like your vehicle commander? Did you say your platoon or section leader? Would you say you
was a vehicle commander within my platoon? So there's 4 vehicles in each platoon.
So I mean, how are you processing that?
I was scared, really scared. I remember the mortar rounds hit out of nowhere. I mean, it was a very boring day before that, and I thought the next one was going to land right on top of us. So I ducked down in my vehicle commander's hatch because I'd be sticking out the top, like half my body's exposed all the time. So when that happened, I started hearing rounds pinging off the vehicle. I ducked down. I was scared. And then I just remember like saying to myself, I was like, no, fuck that. Get up and shoot at these guys. And then I just stood up and racked the 240 and just started shooting at it. And that moment really changed my entire life.
How?
Because it was the first time ever I'd really was like scared to death, like almost borderline like paralyzed with fear. Like I thought for sure, because those explosions were massive and they were right next to us. And I was like, there's no way this next one's not coming down right on top of us. And this vehicle's not going to save us. And to be like crouching down inside the vehicle, kind of like cowering. And this was only for like maybe 5 seconds total. But then to make the decision, like, no, I'm going to stand up and shoot back and be in this. It just changed my whole life.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And that was really the only time in that deployment where I had a situation like that, because after that, after the first 3 weeks, they just realized they couldn't contend with us in conventional warfare. So they just planted IEDs. Because the way that day ended, we ended up calling in, our mortars ended up taking out, I think, from what I remember, like a big section of this forest they were hiding in. And then we called in a show of force, or like an F-18 swooped in. And it was like a really crazy display of firepower in retaliation to what they did. And after that, I don't know if it was because of that day specifically, there was more firefights and stuff after that. I just wasn't the one directly involved in them, but it did trickle down significantly by that 3rd week to where it was just IEDs.
Which are the worst.
Yeah.
Who got hit first? When did, because IEDs are, for me, were a terrifying thing. VBIDs and IEDs are just no thank you. And so who was the first in your platoon?
The first casualties we took, they weren't in my platoon. They were in Delta Company.
Okay.
We were in like kind of different sections of the AO. So we had slightly different missions. Delta was, so in the center of Khanjar where we were, there's this big like medieval looking castle made out of mud and sand that was like rumored to have been built by Alexander the Great.
Really?
It's crazy. It's been there
photos of this?
I'm sure I do. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
It's huge. And so Delta the main objective when we got there was to take that castle and turn it into a forward operating base.
Really?
So Delta Company took the castle.
Okay.
Charlie Company then went to go clear out all the villages around it. And that's like when that ambush I was in happened. So by the first casualties we took were, I want to say July 13th, if I remember correctly. It was in that time frame. And It was Delta Company. It was Master Sergeant Hatfield, who'd been there for a long time. He was like a guy everybody knew. And then this other guy named Lance Corporal Barboza Flores, who I didn't know him personally, but they were leaving that castle forward operating base to come to this little combat outpost that we had set up. And on the way there, they hid an IED. And I remember the day it happened, the only way we would like shower was the Helmand River. And so we had one platoon down on the Helmand River, like chilling out, swimming, like kids basically, while another platoon was on overwatch. And we were down there, and I remember just hearing an explosion in the distance. And I was like, that's weird. Like, you get used to hearing that stuff by then. Yeah. And then we got told to pack up and get moving and get, we had to go respond because there was an IED that that vehicle hit. And we got there, and they were both already dead. And yeah, they were pulling Master Sergeant Hatfield out to medevac him out.
So that was your first time experiencing death in war.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It made it very real. It deeply affected me. And I didn't know either of them. These weren't like my friends. They were just people that I served with and not even served that closely with. But to see the tangible results of what was going on out there and like the randomness of it, it's not like these guys were in some big firefight that went on for hours and, we took casualties, but
got a lucky round.
Yeah. And but we like really gave it back to them. It was literally just like a quiet, normal day. Yeah. And now you got 2 Marines dead. And it changed everything. It set a tone for what the rest of that deployment would be and how random those IEDs would be and how devastating that it would be.
Yeah, they because by this point you guys are rolling around. I mean, are the majority guys in MRAPs or what?
We're all in LAVs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's MRAPs in the AO too because we have engineers and stuff like that. But it also proved that the LAVs weren't going to stand up to their IEDs.
For sure.
So even in a vehicle, you don't really feel safe at that point because the LAVs, they're very versatile, but the underneath them is not thick armor.
No.
Even the walls are not really thick armor. So it's like they're really good for a lot of things, but not sustaining IED blasts.
IEDs crippled the United States' military really quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was unsettling to know that could be planted in such random places too. Like you'd think they'd only be on roads, but they weren't. They would plant them in even places that it was obvious you had to go around to avoid what you'd imagine would be the target. They'd put them there too. So it was wild. And, we were still taking indirect mortar fire and there's sporadic firefights and stuff like that. But the IED threat was really what became scary. And I mentioned earlier, Delta Company was in that big castle.
Yeah.
They held it for the whole deployment and they took IDF every single day, morning and night for I don't even know how many days straight. So they took all of the casualties that happened on that deployment were Delta Company.
Okay.
Yeah. And some from IEDs, some from mortar rounds, and there was wounded in the mix in with all that stuff. And yeah, they had a tough time.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Cause
it was a battle.
It was a battle and it was fought very unconventionally, and it's like, you're in a position where you're almost like a sitting duck for a lot of it. And there's no like fighting back. An IED goes off. It's not like there's no one to shoot back at. So it's very demoralizing.
And it could have been set a week ago.
Exactly.
They put out some pressure plate and everybody in the village knows about it and it just sits and waits. And those guys are long gone. They're 3 villages down setting IEDs down there now. And then all of a sudden it's literally like setting just a booby trap.
Yeah.
And here comes a platoon and rolls over it and here you go.
So those first 3 weeks, it was crazy. The pace was crazy. The IED threat started appearing. And then on July 27th, maybe around there, 26th, 27th, I called my mom on the company satellite phone. We just had one that we would pass around and use. And I would call to like check in on her, let her know I'm all right. She was very good friends with Nick's mom, Lisa. So they talked. So I'd get news on Nick from that. And on either July 26th or 27th, I called home and it was nighttime and my mom answered the phone and she said, has anyone contacted you? And I go, no, nobody's contacted me. I'm in the middle of Afghanistan. And then she said, Nick was killed on July 23rd.
How'd you take that?
I was devastated. My mind couldn't even compute it. I was like, no, there's gotta be a mistake. Maybe he's wounded, but he'll be fine. Like they must just not know yet. And maybe they got bad information. I refused to accept it. There was just no way that a guy like that could be dead. Like not even 4 months earlier, we were just partying and drinking in Wilmington and having the time of our life.
And now you're getting word. Was there doubt in it because you didn't hear anything from any of the units? Like word hadn't spread that you're getting it from your mom in the States, like she knows, but you're over here. Was that, were you questioning it because of, did that have something to do with like, okay, how does my mom know? How have I not gotten
No,
word?
it was just complete denial.
Okay.
It was just like my brain saying like, that can't be true. And yeah, I was devastated, really devastated. And I don't remember what the rest of the conversation was after that. And we at that point had a combat outpost that we were operating in and out of. So we had like a home base kind of. It was still not really great conditions. But I remember I ended up setting up a little makeshift tent out of my poncho liner and was just crying, smoking cigarettes and drinking hot water, and really, really devastated. And sandstorm rolled through. And yeah, I just couldn't, I didn't have the ability to process it. Like, because most of the combat that we were dealing with, I mean, there was Master Sergeant Hatfield and Lance Corporal Barboza Flores was killed, but for Charlie Company, we hadn't taken any casualties.
Yep.
And in the midst of combat being scary, like it's also fun. Like there's an element of fun. You're on an adventure of a lifetime with your friends in the desert. You're all wearing the same uniform. You're, carrying guns. You're sleeping on the ground. Like it's not necessarily that the combat itself is fun, but the entire thing as a whole is a very singular experience you'll never have anywhere else.
Absolutely.
And when you're managing to get through, those first 3 weeks, like I said, were crazy and none of your guys have gotten hurt, you start to feel like you're kind of invincible. And even though we had taken casualties, it still wasn't us yet.
Yep.
And so I'm like, well, there's no way Nick could be killed. There's just no way. And I just couldn't compute it. And I don't know, maybe 24 hours went by and my platoon commander came to get me. And at this point, the whole company like knew about it because they were all close and they knew Nick was my friend. Some of them had met him because he would come to my barracks back in Camp Lejeune. And the platoon commander said, hey, the battalion commander, his name was Lieutenant Colonel Groton. He was actually from Boston too. He said he wants to talk to you. And I was like, I assumed it was about Nick because why else would he want to talk to a corporal?
Yeah.
So I go into his tent. It was nighttime. And he says, hey, I'm sorry about your friend, Nick. What do you think about going home for his funeral? And I'm just like, what do you mean going home? How is that even an option? I'm a vehicle commander. I have my crew. We're out here in the height of this deployment. It's like, I just can't do that. I don't feel right doing that.
Well, now you're being torn. Do I leave my boys in this war zone? Or do I go home for my best friend's funeral?
Yeah.
That's a tough decision.
Yeah. And I expressed that to him and he understood where I was coming from. And he said, listen, we're going to go into an operational stand down for like 10 days because we need to recoup and fix our vehicles and build up this outpost. And then we're going to get ready to push further south towards the Pakistan border. So there'll be a helicopter here tomorrow morning. Get on it, go home, bury your friends, say goodbye, and then come back. And you just join us right back where you left off. And I must have asked him like several times, are you sure? Like there's going to be this stand down because I can't leave my guys. And he assured me there would be. And then I did it. I made the decision to go home. And it was probably the most conflicting decision I ever made in my entire life. Still is. Yeah. Like I carried a lot of shame about that for a long time.
Why?
Because, I was leaving my guys.
Okay.
And it just didn't feel right. There was other guys in that deployment who were having kids, their sons and daughters were born. They didn't get to see them.
Yep.
And now like I'm going home to go bury my friend. And it was just very conflicting, and it was so dangerous there too. Like there's a chance I leave and something happens and somebody dies. It wasn't like Iraq where you're on a big base and just kind of like chilling out, eating at the chow hall.
Yeah.
And, so the whole situation was really conflicting and really confusing too, because then I started thinking like, well, how is this even happening? Like, how am I getting this option to go home? So I end up calling my mom on the satellite phone again. And I tell her, I'm like, yeah, I'm coming home. And she proceeds to tell me that a mutual friend of mine and Nick's from high school, her name was Nicole Warren. She at the time was interning for Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed.
Okay.
She tells him the story. Like these two friends went to boot camp together. They're deployed, but in different parts of Afghanistan. Nick has been killed. Andrew's still in Afghanistan. He goes on to tell Senator John Kerry the same story. The two senators get together and then go to the Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates at the time, and tell him the story. And he goes, we're going to get this guy home to say goodbye to his friend. So that chain of events caused that word to come all the way down from the Secretary of Defense to General Nicholson, who is the commander of the entire MEB, to Lieutenant Colonel Groton, who was my battalion commander.
No shit.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because it's not normal to just get pulled.
No.
I mean, my best friend got killed. He joined the Army. I joined the Marines. We were going to be in Iraq at the same time. He left a month before me. He got killed within hours of being on the ground, and they wouldn't even let me fly. And I was still in the States. They wouldn't even let me fly to New York for his funeral because we were, at this point, by the time he's back, everything was ready. We were, I think, a week or two out from deploying. And they were like, no, it's too much of a risk right now to let you go. And that was here in the States. So to bring you all the way back from Afghan, I mean,
it was crazy.
What a great thing to be able to do, though, to put your boy to rest.
So I packed all my stuff into a little backpack, my desert camis, hopped on that helicopter the next morning, went to Bagram Air Base. It was like a total just fish out of water. I'd just come from, war and deep in the Helmand to a base that looks like there's, Burger Kings and nobody really gives a shit of what's going on.
Everybody's in PT gear, no rifles.
Yeah.
You're just probably like, okay, how do I process this?
So I'm directed to go meet some Marine liaison whose job is to coordinate commercial flights. He gives me a plane ticket voucher. I go no, that wasn't even at that point. I didn't even get a plane ticket voucher. He told me to go meet with these pilots that were going to give me a ride from there to Germany. I think it was kind of convoluted, this whole journey. But anyway, so then I get on a C5 by myself with these pilots, and I'm like laying in the back of it. It's loud as hell. I go to Germany, and then from Germany, I meet with another liaison who gives me a plane ticket. From Germany, I go to New Hampshire, Pease Air Force Base, which is like a civilian military hybrid airport. And then my dad and my two friends, PJ and Brendan, picked me up with a 30-pack of Budweiser.
Well, okay, so you were in at the depths of Afghan, lose your best friend, and within 72 hours, you're back in the United States.
Yeah, I made it back to his wake, which was held at the high school that we went to, like right in the middle of it, as there was probably the most people that could possibly been there, thousands and thousands of people. And I made it there. I was in my desert cami still with Afghan sand in my hair.
How are you processing this? Are you?
Well, by then I was drunk because I was pounding butt heavies on the way home because I was a kid,
Yeah.
And I mean, I wasn't drunk, but I was, that's how I was processing it.
The Marine logic.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
And I get there and I see my mom and, hug her, and I see like everybody I've ever known is at that wake. My brother, my sister, Nick's family. And I'm still like, it just feels like a dream, the whole thing.
Do you have emotions? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how I would even I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, to going from that tempo of survival in Afghan to now you're at your boy's wake. And
yeah, I mean, I was like in, I guess, shock, like just emotional overload. And so I just was like, I got to do what I got to do. And I didn't want to be emotional in front of anybody because, I'm there in a Marine Corps uniform, and like, I felt like I was like a walking representation of Nick.
Okay.
So like all those emotions I was going to keep to myself, and I got there and it really still wasn't real to me until I saw his coffin with the American flag draped on it and flowers around and everybody lined up for what looked like miles to see him.
How did that hit you?
Hard. Yeah. It was crazy. It really was. And then after that, I went home to my mom's house, and I remember taking off those camis and then just getting in the shower. It's the first shower I've had in months at that point, and just sat there in the shower for like an hour. And that's when I like cried and kind of let it all sink into me. And then the next day was his funeral. And at the funeral, I read a eulogy form that I'd written in Afghanistan in a journal that I never thought I'd be able to read it. I was going to transcribe it to my mom over the satellite phone, not knowing I was going to actually go home. So I read it in front of this whole Greek church with everybody there for Nick with his coffin next to me. And I was standing there in desert camis because that was the only uniform I had. And I didn't want to not wear something with an EGA on it. And
damn, dude, you had no time for anything.
No. And I stood there and I read the eulogy, and I looked out at the crowd afterwards, and like everybody just was so devastated and just like in shock, like as was I. And I just said to the crowd, I go, they may have killed Nick, but we're killing a lot more of them, and we're going to keep killing them in a church. So you got to
say that was it's
yeah, but it was like, that was I thought it was the right thing to do at the time.
Absolutely.
And then John Kerry was there, who was, so I said that in front of him, in front of a Greek priest. It was just like, the whole scene was just crazy.
Well, then again, at the same time, in your defense, the last thing they should probably have done is put a Marine straight off the battlefield that just lost his best friend speaking
Yeah, but
in front of a crowd of people.
It was really, I mean, that was probably the defining moment of my whole life, was that, because I knew if I could do that, then there'd be nothing, no moment would ever be bigger than me. You know what I mean? Like, because it was hard. Everything about it was hard. I was just in Afghanistan 3 days earlier, like in austere conditions, to say the least, with people getting killed, the threat of being killed. I just found out Nick died, and I got to go back to that same thing in less than a week. And now I'm standing here in this podium in front of everyone I know, my whole family, Nick's whole family,
Your whole community.
what felt like all of Cape Cod, which was my community and really was. And I'm reading this eulogy that I had written when I was in Afghanistan 2 days ago. And, yeah, that was really a defining moment in my life, being able to do that.
If you want me asking, what were some of the topics, or what was some of the important parts of the eulogy, if you don't mind sharing? I mean, what as far as just being able to talk about your boy?
I mean, I talked about how we thought we were invincible, talked about the partying in Wilmington, how we were just like living our dream, living everything we wanted to do. We were Marines. Talked about how we wanted to be in Afghanistan. Talked about just a lot of stuff, kind of like who he was as a person and how indirectly I followed his lead on a lot of things without even realizing it. And I mean, there was a lot more. It was probably like 2 or 3 pages, but it was really from the heart. And I wrote it when I was in Afghanistan, not thinking I'd ever be able to read it. And
Were you able to keep it together throughout this whole thing?
yeah,
No shit.
yeah, I managed, because I was like,
That'd have been tough.
it was tough, but it was just like, I viewed it as another mission, like almost like it's part of the deployment.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, this is
You're
what
still in that mindset.
yeah, this is what I have to do. Like, I was literally just not even at that point 2 weeks ago in a complex ambush, getting shot at and almost mortar rounds dropped on top of me. And now I'm doing this, and I got to go back to that. And it's what I have to do. And so I guess that was like the first time in my life where I really learned how to compartmentalize things.
Yep.
And bury them to do what needs to be done.
Yep. Which isn't always the best thing. They usually
Not
come
long
out-
term.
Yeah, they usually come back out.
There's a
eventually.
place for it, when you have to be in those moments, for sure. But long term, it's not the best way to do things.
No.
And that took me a long time to realize that.
Absolutely. That's one thing they don't really do well teaching us. They teach us how to hide it and bury it for that time being or that moment, but there's never any circling back to and be like, hey, let's scrape the scab off of that and let it heal properly. But instead, as us as men and Marines, we just bury and bury and bury and bury, and then before we know it, it's coming out.
And most people do that in like a lot of aspects of their life. Marines
absolutely.
or not, it's
Absolutely.
kind of a thing that especially men tend to do. And it comes out in ways that aren't productive. And when you least expect it, it ends up dictating a lot of your life too.
100%.
Because instead of you taking control of the context of it, it controls everything, and you
Mhm.
just don't realize it. But so we had, buried Nick, had the funeral, horse-drawn carriage, taps played, the whole thing. It was big, a lot of people were there. It was a big turnout. And then I spent the rest of that week just like partying and drinking and hanging out with everybody. Everybody was home from college, because at this time, all of our friends were in college.
Okay.
So they were all home. It just turned into one big party, just drunk the whole time, so I didn't have to think about anything. And then I had to go back.
Okay. What's that like? War zone, within hours, back in the United States for your best friend's funeral, and then getting back on a plane to go back to Afghanistan. What is that like?
Well, as soon as his funeral was done, like, I was happy to be partying with everybody, but I wanted to get back to Charlie Company.
Okay.
Like, because that conflict and shame about making that decision was weighing heavily on me. That was
sure.
part, I mean, obviously Nick being killed and all that was very traumatic and difficult, but also knowing that my guys were in Afghanistan
Yeah,
still
you're not
was
forgetting about
eating
that.
away at me the entire time. So as soon as all that was done, I wanted to get back as soon as possible. I mean, it was weighing on me tremendously, but by the time I actually left and got on the plane to go back, I was like, I want to get back to them as soon as I can.
Okay.
So I had to basically hitchhike my way in reverse to Afghanistan. I had a plane ticket voucher, went back to that same Air Force base, then to Germany, then Germany to Kyrgyzstan or something, then Kyrgyzstan to Bagram, and then Bagram to Camp Leatherneck, where the whole thing started. And then there was so much going on across Helmand that they couldn't get me. There's no helicopters available to get me down there because they're being rerouted for medevacs and all these other things.
So you're just chilling?
So I was chilling. It was terrible. I just felt the most useless I've ever felt my entire life.
You're forgotten about.
Yeah. And then
a lot of guys don't realize, like, if you don't say anything, they might forget about you for like a month.
Totally. I had to advocate for myself every day. I was up at 5 a.m. asking these motor T
100%.
guys, where can I get on a convoy? And the convoys leaving Leatherneck were getting hit by IEDs, not like catastrophic ones, but enough to delay them.
Mhm.
So there was just like one barrier after another. And it turned into me staying there for, I don't even know, probably a week.
Okay.
So it had
Losing your
exceeded, oh my God, yeah. And it had exceeded that stand down period my battalion commander told me about. So they were back to operating, you know? So I get word.
Now you got the itch.
I got the
Even
itch. And then I
worse.
also get word that my platoon was involved in a troops in contact where one of the vehicles hit an IED. So
And you're sitting there stuck.
stuck. My worst fear had come true. Like
You're
that,
losing your
it was
mind.
terrible.
Okay.
And eventually I got on a convoy and made my way down and went back to our little tiny combat outpost, middle of nowhere, and got back with the guys. So my platoon commander, I'm sure I brought him back some stuff from the United States. I can't remember what, probably a bunch of cigarettes. And then I saw my platoon commander. He's like, hey, you ready to get back in the saddle? We're leaving tomorrow for a 3-day mission. And I said, yeah. And I was just so thankful they hadn't given someone else my vehicle commander spot. My gunner, Chad Williams, had filled in when I was gone, and he's amazing. I can't say enough good things about that guy. The most resourceful, reliable Marine I've ever met. I don't know how I would have got through that deployment without him. But so he took my spot, but then they gave it back to me, which was amazing that they would do that. And then the next day we go on this mission, and within 24 hours, I hit an IED. Yeah, so right when I got back.
Were you like, fuck, I should have just stayed home? God, what a just morale killer after everything that you've just gone through for the last week.
Yeah,
Or
it was
a couple weeks, I would say, at this point.
It was crazy, and it was luckily not big enough to be catastrophic. And being the vehicle commander, I was sticking out the top all the time. So I have a 240, and I'm like in a turret. So the blast, while it was, you know, big and disabled the vehicle completely, the concussive effects weren't as bad for me because I wasn't encased in the vehicle. But my crew all got like pretty messed up from it and ended up having to stay back on the COP at the battalion aid station to get like treated for concussions. And Chad Williams, the one I was telling you, my right-hand man, he got really messed up because the blast, he was sitting right by where we store the tow missiles, and each one of those probably weighs like, I don't even know, 80 pounds. And it came off and hit him right in the head. So he definitely got a TBI that was just never diagnosed from that, and from the concussion from underneath too. So it was a whole mess. So they brought us back to our combat outpost, and then they stayed on the COP, and then I went back out to take command of another vehicle because we had a guy that also had a concussion and they needed to replace him. So I went back out and kept operating with a different crew, and then a whole bunch more stuff happened, and you know, we just continued that deployment. Like it wasn't over when I left to go home to bury Nick. And when I came back, we were actually almost doing more than when I had left.
Oh,
and
so the tempo. So during that time when they did that stand down, they just restructured how the tempo of where you guys were going to be going and how you guys were going to be operating during that time.
that's what it seemed like. Yeah.
Okay.
And planning future missions.
Okay.
And then when I got back, we just went right to them.
Just full force.
Yeah. And then the IED threat was that was the tail of the rest of the thing. I mean, I hit one the day after I got back. So now I still had, that was August. So I still had 3 months left of the deployment.
Okay.
So it was like right at the halfway point when Nick was killed. But then luckily I made it home, and I had only about 6 months left on my contract, and I wanted just nothing to do with the Marine Corps at that point.
I feel you.
I was very cynical. You know, every plan I had, like, it was just different. Like there was no partying in Wilmington anymore. It was just, I didn't know how to process it, and I was just angry. And then I got out, and I left the gates of Camp Lejeune in June of 2010 and went home back to Cape Cod to live in my mom's basement.
How did you process that transition out? Because obviously you've buried a lot at this point.
Yeah.
As a young Marine, you're clearly not trying to, you know, process the trauma, really think about what you're walking away from, probably still haven't even really dove into losing your best friend. And then now you're in your mom's basement.
Yeah.
Did you spiral? Were you right back to work? What was the tempo for you after transitioning out, after dealing with all that?
Well, by the time I got out, I was just so excited to just go home.
Okay.
I just wanted to like be left alone.
Real quick, how long until you got back from deployment before you were out?
It was probably 6 months, and then I had like 2 months of terminal leave.
Okay.
So 4 months. So enough to be like a short timer. And
yeah, that's a quick back and
maybe 6, I would say, is probably a good number.
Okay.
But I just wanted to go home. I was like, I remember saying to myself, I'll go work at a convenience store if I can just be left alone and just like chill out. And then I got home, and to answer your question, did I spiral? Yeah, pretty significantly.
Did you?
I had a girlfriend at the time who was awesome, but I was in no position to be in any sort of relationship whatsoever.
For sure.
So she ended up leaving me, which rightly so. I don't blame her at all. And I was a kid, and she was a kid too. So I tried to go to community college and like find different career paths. I tried to do EMT and do that whole certification and failed it a couple times. Just drank and partied a lot and was like trying to live this life that I thought I missed out on in the previous 4 years. But I'm still holding on to this identity of being a Marine and like all this stuff I did. And it was a lot harder for me than people on the outside probably ever knew. And at the same time, I also went back to the same town that Nick and I grew up in, but now he's not there. Yeah. So I had a massive amount of survivor's guilt that I didn't know what survivor's guilt was at the time.
Yep.
But it was killing me.
That's one of the biggest killers, I think, in veterans, from having an organization for over a decade. Some of the worst case guys as far as just mental battles is the survivor's guilt and trying to convince these guys that it wasn't their fault. And no matter what, the circumstances may have been, really hits guys hard. Really, that was one of those things of when learning and getting into the depths of what's the trauma of veterans and how to overcome these things. Those are some of the hardest guys I've worked with, or survivor's guilt veterans. And it's just, they take it very, very personal. And it's really hard to rewire the brain out of that mindset that it's, should have been me. Why Nick? Why this? I should have been there type of deal.
Yeah. And I was in a bit of a unique situation too, because like you'll join the Marine Corps and you meet a lot of people from all over the country and one of your friends might get killed, but you're not from the same hometown.
Yeah.
So when you get out and go your separate ways, like if you want to go be reminded of him, you'd have to go to where he lives, wherever the country is. You don't know his family really. You don't know his friend group. You just know him in that singular experience of the Marine Corps.
Yep.
So for me, when I got home, everything was a reminder of the fact that I came home and he didn't.
You two left together and you're coming home.
Yeah. And it was hard and
really empty for you.
Yeah. It was very isolating, self-isolating, because like I went through all this stuff. No one else around me had gone through that or even knew, and it was just hard. And I drank a lot to deal with it. And I just hung out with friends and like, didn't really do anything productive. I never lost that drive of like being a Marine. Like I remember even like I'd wake up and like go run like PT, and I hated running when I was in the Marine Corps. By the end, I was like, I never want to do this again. But then I get out and I'm like trying to hold on to this identity so strongly. And that went on for probably a year and a half, maybe a year. And then Nick's dad, Steve Exaros, he was a lieutenant with the Yarmouth Police Department at the time. And he convinced me to take the police exam. And I had never had any intention of being a police officer my entire life. Like it was not something I wanted to do. I just never had any plan to do it. I didn't think that was like something a guy like me could do. I had no degree in criminal justice. Yep. I was just a Marine grunt, and back then it was very difficult to get police jobs. You'd have probably 500 people trying to apply to like 2 positions.
Well, especially the Northeast.
Yeah.
It's a good old boy. Same with firefighters. It's good old boy network there. So you have to know somebody to.
And yeah. And even then it's still hard. Yeah. And so there was no jobs available at the time. So what I ended up doing was self-sponsoring myself to go to police academy, which is where like a department endorses you, which is what Steve ended up doing for Yarmouth. Okay. And then you go to the police academy and pay for yourself. And when you're done, you're a certified police officer. So you can like apply to a job, and now they don't have to send you to an academy. So you cut ahead of a lot of people.
Okay. Is that expensive?
Yeah, it was like $6,000.
Okay.
And then you're not getting paid when you're in it.
Okay. Yep.
And luckily I had saved money for my 2 deployments, so it wasn't a huge loss. And my mom helped me. I was living with her for free. And I ended up going with Nick's little brother, Alex Exaros.
No kidding.
Yeah. In 2011, we went to the police academy in Quincy, Massachusetts, and we graduated in, I want to say May. It's 28 weeks, 6 months long. It's twice as long as Marine Corps boot camp.
Yeah, that's brutal.
I remember being halfway through the thing and I was like, I'd be a Marine by now. Like this is ridiculous.
Yeah, my career could have been started 6 months ago.
My God. And
it is a little excessive, but I mean, there's a lot of information they're trying to cram into you guys within those 6 months.
But it was exactly what I needed at that point in my life. Okay. It was exactly what I needed because I wasn't too far removed from that structure of the military to where, like, if I did that 5 years later, it would have been really hard because you're like completely out of that mindset of getting yelled at and doing all that stuff. So it really put me back on track. And what prior to that, earlier that summer, before I joined the police academy, I was like at probably my lowest state, like really lost. That relationship I had talked about before ended, as it should have because of, how I was at the time.
For sure.
And I was just at like probably the lowest point in my life. I really was. I felt completely useless. I was just like depressed, but didn't even know I was because I was just like, I had that Marine mindset.
No
so I was
purpose.
Like, so I'm just going to the gym every day, drinking at night, repeating that process, trying to like ask people to hang out as though we're like in college. And one day I came home to my mom's house and on the front door was this like red envelope lodged between the glass door and the like storm door.
Yep.
And I could tell it was from the Marine Corps. So I'm like, what is this? So I open it and it's a Navy Achievement Medal with a V for that firefight that I was in on July 6th.
Okay.
My company commander had put me in for the award, but because I got out on terminal leave, it didn't get processed until I was already gone.
Yep.
So he mailed it to my house with a personal letter saying like, basically like, Mr. Coville now instead of Corporal Coville, like, I wish you the best. You deserve this award and never forget what you did and what you did for your country and what you're continuing to do for your country. And it like really changed my, it was a huge turning point for me because I was in this depressive state and I got this and it like reminded me of who I was and what I had done.
Perfect timing.
Like you couldn't have written it better. And then after that, I went to the police academy and things started turning around and I did that self-sponsor thing. I got a job as a part-time reserve police officer for a while where I learned a lot about the job. And then I got hired by Yarmouth Police where Steve Exaros had worked too.
Okay.
And then I worked there for almost 15 years.
Okay, let's jump into law enforcement.
Yeah.
Because your career ended abruptly. Like you'd still probably be a cop.
Yeah, I was next on the list to get promoted to lieutenant.
Okay, so let's talk some cop life because I have a lot of law enforcement on here. Most of them come on and speak about their negative sides of departments and corruption and all the crazy shit, right? Which it is what it is. But I want to get your perspective on just being a cop in the Northeast. Like you're surrounded by wealth.
Sometimes.
Okay, so where exactly is this based out of? Geographically wise.
So Yarmouth, it's on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Like,
because I think of Cape Cod, I'm thinking of just mansions and the beach and everything else like that. So is that not the norm up there or what?
That does exist there for sure. So the town I worked in is called Yarmouth. It's probably about like 35,000 people year round, and then you could double that number in the summer easily.
Okay, so that's a decent number.
Departments like I think when we're fully staffed, 65 from the top down.
Okay.
And there is a lot of wealth on Cape Cod, but there's another side to it too. There's a whole class of people that aren't that wealth and they aren't that middle class and they're like kind of stuck there. So, there's crime more than people would think. And the thing about law enforcement too, in my opinion, is no matter where you're doing that job, it's just, it's all relative to the location. Because no matter where you're doing it, you're dealing with other people's problems all the time. So whether you're a cop in, some town of 10,000 people or LAPD, it's just scaled to what that population is. But if you're used to only dealing with that 10,000 people population, things seem like a big deal to you that would seem like nothing to the LAPD guy.
For sure.
And then vice versa. So like really the stress of it is relative to the person experiencing it, if that makes sense.
The guy in the small community gets a murder a year and it's the whole thing. But meanwhile, in LA cop, they're dealing with nine a day.
But it's still very real to that guy.
For sure.
And Yarmouth was like, it was, I would describe it as this. It was busy enough to never be bored, but not so busy you were ever like stressed to death, like where you're totally overextended and burnt out.
Yeah.
So for me, it was perfect. I loved it. I got to serve this community that took care of me when I came home for Nick, and I got to wear a uniform again. And I really loved it. I found my purpose again, and it meant a lot to me. And I also was so grateful to have the job because, like I said, I never planned to be a police officer.
Yeah.
It wasn't like my whole life. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a cop. I'm going to get a degree in criminal justice and do this whole route. So when I got that job, I was like, wow, I got to do like everything I can to keep this spot on the roster so that I earn this. And that was my mentality. And I was also so grateful because I was used to dealing with the Marine Corps. Like all this stuff we talked about earlier, you know what I mean? Where like you're just dealing with bullshit all the time.
Yeah.
So then when I got this job as a police officer and I'm trying to like take time off, and you know, like in the Marines, they deny your leave like it's nothing.
Just because.
Yeah, they deny your leave if you're like family member died and say, oh, we can't, we got to go to the field next week. But then to realize all I have to do is hand a vacation slip in and I have a day off, I was like, my mind was just blown. And, you know, and so I was like,
is this a trap?
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not doing anything to mess this up.
Yeah.
And
you're not even taking days off because you're just too scared to screw it up.
Totally. Like I was like, I don't even know if I've earned this yet. Like I had that boat mentality.
For sure.
And but it's a good sized town for that area. And there is, you know, there's crime, but you're right. There is an element of wealth and mansions and homes on the beach. And then part of the problem is that most people think that. So then when they go there and they realize there's crime, they're like, whoa, I didn't know this existed here.
Right.
So it creates a really interesting dynamic.
Interesting. What was your favorite part about being a cop?
Well, there was different parts at different times. You know, the first like few years, I just loved everything about doing the job, being part of something again. I loved helping people, which I know is like the most generic answer every cop and firefighter probably gives, but I genuinely did. And I loved being like with the guys again, like having your tribe, so to speak.
Okay.
And just going into work, being part of something, have the ability to work overtime to make money, to just have like a life. I was just so grateful for it. You know, before that I was drinking in my mom's basement.
Gave you some purpose again.
And then as time went on, that as you change, that purpose changes too.
Okay.
And you start like finding different parts of the job that you really want to be passionate about. And for me, one of the biggest parts was mental health and the veteran stuff. Like we would deal with veterans and I'd have a department full of people who really knew nothing about it. So I became like a bridge to, if you had some mental health call and it's a vet who's like having a hard time, I would go talk to him, you know, because like,
okay, what's that like?
Well, I mean, you've been around a lot of veterans and a lot of them can tend to be in like a self-imposed isolation where they're like, no one understands. And it's like, well, they do. You just don't tell it. They want to understand, but you just don't tell them. So I would be the guy who would be like, well, tell me what's going on. And I'd like sift through what they had. And I'd be like, okay, so it sounds to me like your problem isn't the 4 years you did in the Army 30 years ago. It's everything after that. So how can we help you here? Because when we show up and you just start going on about how you're a veteran, it has nothing to do with the problem at hand here. No. Like, thank you for your service. Yeah, I appreciate it, just like everybody. But like, that doesn't negate the entire lifetime of poor choices you've made after that.
That led to you.
Yes.
Of why I have my gun drawn on you.
Yeah. Or even
this moment, or just even in this conversation.
Yeah. So,
well, did I say that because you see a lot of these guys, the mental health vets, you know, they have their moment of weakness, and then these cops are trying to talk to them. But there's some pretty powerful videos out there of other veteran law enforcement officers. They're like, hey, brother, like, I serve too. And it almost, you immediately start de-escalating and bringing that situation down. And it's such a crucial thing to have in that department of somebody that can relate, or, hey, I've been there. Hey, I've done this. I lost friends too. Hey, we've all been there. Then they're able to connect, and it almost takes their mind off the situation of wherever they brought, why they're there at that moment. And so I'm sure this is a huge piece of equipment, you being in the department, being able to handle these.
Yeah. And it was great. And I loved it. And, you know, I do what I said before, like there'd be guys who had a lot of other issues that weren't just the military, but there'd be vets too that needed help. Like they had no idea how to use their GI Bill. They had no idea how to get involved with the VA. They didn't know like any of these things. So I would set them up and connect them with people so they could kind of get the start that I had. And I loved doing that. And in the process of that, I dealt with a lot of mental health calls because, you know, some of them were veterans, some weren't, but so I got good at it. I got good at talking to people. I got good at being empathetic and actively listening and like really trying to help people instead of just solve the problem as quickly as possible and move on to the next. So after I did that for a while, I ended up getting on the crisis negotiation team as part of the SWAT team. We have a regional SWAT team where it's like all different departments contribute to it. Yeah. And I didn't really want to be like a SWAT operator because I had no interest in it, but I wanted to do the negotiation. And I ended up going to the FBI crisis negotiator school. They do them all over the country, but this one was up in Maine.
No shit. What's that like?
It was cool. It was cool. It was a lot of, like, for me, that whole being able to do that kind of, like, they used to call it hostage negotiation. Now they call it crisis negotiation. I don't want to say you either have it or you don't, but there is an element of, like, you're either
You have it or you
inclined to it or you're not, because when I went through that school, it was good, but it was like a lot of very obvious things where I'm like, if you're not already thinking about this and need to be taught it, you're probably not going to be able to do it.
That's a good point.
You know, and
There should be a natural reaction to be able to respond to somebody in a certain way.
Yeah. And then I got done with that school, and then I had several situations where I used those skills, whether it was on patrol or in actual crisis situations. And I loved it. I really did.
What's the protocol or the procedures, I guess, for a crisis moment? Is there a checklist where when you, okay, so let's say I'm the vet that's having my moment and you show up, is there, like, are you going through a checklist and you're like, okay, I'm trying to make contact, I'm trying to get his name? Is there almost a protocol in your head that you guys have to go through, or are you just winging it and you know different things that you have to touch on or try to feel out? How do you roll into a situation with somebody that's having a mental crisis?
Well, I mean, each situation's different.
For sure.
If it arises to the point where you need the whole SWAT team, there's a whole matrix that's like different things are plugged in that determines that. But usually by the time I would get there, the SWAT team was already in place.
Okay.
Or I'd be dealing with something just like on my patrol duties that I just would prevent from escalating to that point. You know, like I'd get called to it, whether or not I was at the call, and then I would do it, and it would prevent the SWAT team even having to be activated. But as far as like a checklist, I mean, when I would get there, the first thing I would always try to do is get a phone number for the guy.
Okay.
Some way to contact him and talk to him on the phone. And more often than not, that actually tended to work. And then you just get, you just talk to people. Be like, what are we doing here? Why are we here? What can we help you with? And sometimes it would take hours. You'd be on the phone talking in circles with somebody. They're screaming, and then they're in some manic episode or whatever. And then sometimes you're just doing it long enough to distract them so the SWAT team can go in and apprehend them.
Yeah.
Or you're convincing them to come outside peacefully. I mean, it's just, each one's different, but I really enjoyed doing it in the sense of, like, there was results that you could see right in front of you. And if you have those skills, it translates to every part of your life.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? If you can really listen to somebody and not interject and just hear what they have to say, and then also, like, repeat back to them what they're saying to you so that they know that you're at least trying to understand.
You sound heard.
Yeah, that's it. Like, everybody just wants to sound heard. And you deal with people that are, like, really at their rope's end sometimes. And when you give them just a soundboard to go off on, even if it's for 3 hours, and this whole SWAT team surrounding their house or whatever, and this didn't happen every single time, but it happened enough times to where I experienced it. And then they come out peacefully and they're, like, thanking you for it. You feel like you really made a difference. That's
got to feel pretty incredible to know that this person was absolute peaking, willing to suicide by cop, whatever it may have been, and then to have them coming out. Did you ever connect with anybody after a crisis?
Several times.
Really?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was good some of the times, and then some of the times it turned into a bit of a problem because some of these people are mentally unstable.
For sure.
And they get off their medications and spiral, and now they're so fixated on you that they become, like, obsessed with you because you're like the one cop that helped them that time. And if they can't get a hold of you, they might, like, they get all pissed off, or they just become, like, obsessed with you, and it becomes this kind of,
you don't care about me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It turns into that type of stuff.
Or they're people that live in the community that I lived in too. You know what I mean? So then it's like
at the grocery store running this guy.
That happened rarely, but
okay.
I always tried to treat people with such respect, and that I never had a problem where if I ran into somebody, it would be an issue. I mean, there was a guy that I dealt with that I arrested, got in a fight with because he fought with us. I ended up breaking a finger in the fight because I slipped on the ice, and this whole thing started because he had a bunch of heroin on him. And, but that whole incident of me arresting him got him 5 years in prison because he was already on probation. He gets out, and then I see him at the grocery store, and he's like, "Hey," and I had headphones on. I turned, I'm like, "Oh, what's up?" And he's just, like, chatting with me for like 10 minutes.
Was that awkward?
It was awkward in the sense of, like, why do you find this necessary to have this conversation? But I also knew it was because he respected me, I guess. Like, I wasn't concerned about it, but I also, like, I'm aware of my surroundings, and, but it was weird in the sense of, like, his lack of self-awareness. Like, why would I want to be having this conversation?
Okay. Yeah.
But that relationship paid dividends over time because we dealt with this guy more, you know?
Oh, so now he knows your name.
He knows my name, and he knows that if like I'm around, he can actually talk to me.
Why is there such a disconnect with a lot of law enforcement officers when it comes to communicating with the community like that? Is it just numb to the job? Is it just years on the force where they just don't care anymore, or they dealt with the same people over and over again? Because you hear so much about cops and they just don't have that. Then it's very rare to hear the cop where you arrest a guy, he goes away for 5 years and then respects you after it because he knows he can talk to you. Is it like, what changes in, I guess I don't even know if there's an answer for it, but it's just there's such this disconnect between law enforcement and the community. And I get, because every call you're not going out and pulling kittens out of trees and, helping a kid with his balloon that blew away or whatever, like all the firefighter calls and the bullshit they get to go on. Everything is, the 99% of what you're responding to is going to be negative. And so does it just wear on cops where they just eventually just stop caring and it's not even a job anymore. It's just their life and they go through? Or, I mean, what separates you from the rest, I guess, would be the question to that. Like what separates a good cop that's willing to communicate, take the time, get to know a person, or versus a cop that's just by the book, straight in and out. This is how it is, black and white, and they just no personality, not trying to actually police the community and be involved in the community.
I think a lot of it comes down to the culture and the example that was set forward by their leadership.
Okay.
But I think the bigger picture of that is just confidence, right? Like there's this whole thing now where they want cops to be trained in this de-escalation, and they want that to be the primary focus. And that's great. Like de-escalation, you have to do. That's what I just talked about with crisis negotiation. Mm-hmm. That's de-escalation. But de-escalation is only effective if you're able to flip that switch and handle business when it needs to be handled.
Absolutely.
You can't have one without the other. You can't just de-escalate indefinitely.
And not everything is going to de-escalate.
You know what I mean? So you have to have the confidence to know if this goes wrong or goes south, I am in complete control no matter what.
Yep.
And when you have that mindset, whether it's from life experience, I mean, I'm sure my experience in the Marine Corps had a lot to do with that. But when you have that self-assuredness, you just view things differently, And then when you have leadership that's acting like that, that's how you want to be. Like you see a guy, you're like, oh, I saw how he handled that. That's how I want to do things. So then it wears off on you. Like the reason I joined the crisis negotiation thing was because one of my sergeants, who was an awesome guy, like, a bit of a mentor, he was kind of on his later years on his way out. So he wasn't as active as he probably was in his earlier years. But when he was on, he was really on. Mm-hmm. When he was dealing with people, he was just like a master at it. He could get people to do anything he wanted and would treat him with such respect and just de-escalated everything. And I was like, that's a guy I want to be like. And then I think that's where it starts, And I think that people in law enforcement too, they become burnt out dealing with the same people over and over again. And you just want to solve a problem as quickly as you can to move on to the next thing.
Got it.
And
which isn't always the best scenario.
No, but it's hard. It can be hard not to get like that when you're dealing with the same stuff over and over again. And I think that law enforcement, where you do it, is a really tough job. And I think that people, they go to trainings and they might not get what was intended from the training because they feel like they're being forced to be there.
So they're automatically should have a wall up.
Yes.
Almost all of our Marine Corps training.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So they don't really pick the things out of it they should, or they just, I mean, I know I said this already, but I really think it comes down to a lack of confidence, and people overcompensate for that lack of confidence in different areas.
I would 100% agree with you on that. I watch a lot of cop footage, and I'll watch how a cop will respond to somebody. I'm like, why not just ask the guy? It's an immediate to the max level. And it's like, and then you look at we'll say perpetrator, right? It's twice the cop size, clearly can handle himself. And then you see these cops come in, and it's like, why? Perfect example, these First Amendment auditors, right? To go through and film public on, I don't know why, but that's all my Facebook feed is. And so that's all I watch. And I'll watch these cops come in and they straight to someone's face. What are you doing? And it's like, that's what you have to offer your community, is straight to 10, you're going to level 10 without being like, hey man, what's going on? Hey, we're just filming. We're like, okay, cool. I'm going to go notify these people inside that you're on a public sidewalk. We have an amendment for this. Let me go explain it to them. But instead they're like, name no, and it's just that immediate escalation. Then you see other cops that walk up and they're like, hey, what's up guys? How are we doing? They're like, oh, we're just executing our amendment. And they're like, yeah, cool. You guys have all the right to do that, and go and notify the bank owner or the employees. And then they walk out and they're like, hey, have a good day. They just don't want you inside. Cool. There's the whole situation. But then now it's this huge screaming thing. And I always watch these videos. I'm like, why handle that situation? Like, I bounced for a lot of years after the Marine Corps. And that was one of the things that I picked up on. Like, when you'd have a drunk, be like, hey buddy, they're cutting you off. I'm going to walk you out of here. And they'd buck up, be like, listen, I'm going to allow you to walk out of here like a man, or you're getting carried out. Those are your two options. And 99% of the time, the guys would be like, yeah, okay, cool. Let's just go. I'm like, let's just go talk outside. But I watch these videos, and that's where I got really good at de-escalating situations. And then I watch these videos and I'm like, out of this cop, like, why that's the tactic that you chose to immediately take it to level 10. I never understood that. And the only thing that ever made sense to me was they're scared.
That is a part of it for sure.
Just they're not confident in who they are as a cop. They're training how to use equipment, tools that's on their belt. And so they just try to have to be the tough guy to scare somebody into submission because that cop is probably threatened in what they're doing.
Definitely, especially younger ones. And then, I mean, you got to remember too, that like if you see, I don't know, a veteran officer, however long they've been around, and they have a moment like that where they bring things to 100 for no reason, what you're seeing is the culmination of every other aspect in their life boiled into that one moment.
Yep.
You know, like, so there's just, you don't know what they have going on behind the scenes either. And then they go to work and somebody presses their buttons. They just don't know how to handle it. And it's, if you don't have that ability to keep your emotions in check, you're in the wrong career field.
100%.
Because you make mistakes that turn into videos that make national news, and now you're making every other cop look bad. So like, if you can't control your emotions and whatever, you need to go to therapy or something, then do it. Because if you're wearing that uniform, you should be held to a standard that is.
Well, nowadays there's literally this people's professions is just to get a rise out of law enforcement officers to cross a line, to cross their rights and end up in a lawsuit and suing these cities. There's people that are making full-time careers suing departments just by pushing cops' buttons. And so that's why it's like, we're in 2026. I'm like, how are these departments not sitting down their troops? They're like, guys, they're just doing everything. And that, I mean, I'm sure there are in some departments, but like, it almost should be quarterly training now of how to deal with.
They definitely have more of that training now.
For sure. But it's becoming a thing. I mean, you see it every day in these cops. And I'm like, bro, how do you not know this dude can be standing here doing this? Like, and they're fighting with people on the streets. And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, you got to remember too, that you're only seeing the bad ones, because those are the only ones that make good videos.
For sure.
So like the thousands of interactions that are like handled well, you just don't see those ones.
For sure.
Because nobody wants to put that out there. But I mean,
I watch them. They're pretty good. And then you see that as an example. You're like, holy shit, the whole video is like a 3-minute video. Then you see a 15-minute, you're like, oh, this is the good one. Then you know, you get some tire cop shows up trying to fight the world. And it's like, bro, why? All you have to do is just be like, hey guys, just don't set foot on the property. And then the whole situation. And I'm sure it's like that for, you know, there's a million types of those situations with cops, but it's just, I just never understood like that you getting out of your car and taking it to immediate 10, that is the best safety for this environment right now. That's one of those things with cops. I'm like, man.
Yeah, trust me, cops feel the same way when they see that. And I think it's like a culmination of a confidence issue. Mm-hmm. They could be scared, or they just have like a multitude of things in their life that lead to that one moment.
Finances. Yeah. I mean, some departments pay well, but I mean, you're living where you're living. I mean, dude, the cost of living up there is probably insane.
People get burnt out too.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like if you work in like a NYPD or something and you're dealing with these things every day nonstop and you have no breathing room from it, I'm sure you get to a point where, you know, you're escalating things way higher than you would have if you weren't exposed to that environment.
Oh, just getting trashed.
Yeah.
Just the most foul language all day. I mean, dude, I watched a video not too long ago, this female cop standing in a subway and these dudes are just trashing her. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, she has to deal with that every single. No wonder she's probably a huge asshole. But you don't ever see that. You don't see the months of people harassing these cops, picking until the video goes viral.
Yep. And we're in a time now where it's very difficult to hire good people that want to be cops. It really is.
I ask all the time. Well, I would listening to cop stories. Obviously, you know, yours is different. But a lot of these guys, I don't know, I have buddies that are here in PDs, and I'm like, God, why would you ever want to be a cop? Not because of the job, just how you're treated.
Yeah.
Most cops don't trust their own admin inside. They say that's the biggest threat. A majority of guys I'm talking to, biggest threat is inside the department. You're treated like shit on every call you go to. Nobody respects cops anymore. I mean, we have this culture where you're seeing little kids flipping off cops driving on the street. I'm like, God, that's so like what is encouraging somebody to go and sign that dotted line to serve their community unless you truly just want to help your community and help others. But it's one of the toughest jobs in our country right now is being a cop.
Definitely. And I was very fortunate to work in a place where the community supported the police.
Great.
You know, in my department, like the admin supported us very well. I mean, and there's everyone's, you know, you got to remember in law enforcement that the solution to one problem is the creation of a new problem for somebody else.
Absolutely.
So it's like very difficult to keep everyone happy all the time. I would say almost impossible, but the administration of my department was never malicious. They were never doing things to intentionally mess with people. They did their best.
For sure.
I really believe that. And
Good.
I think that trickled down to the leadership in all levels too. So we never really had, you're always going to have unhappy people on some level, but it was never so bad where it was like a cancer, where it was too far gone. And because of that, I think that you're in an environment where people aren't as likely to snap like that because they don't have all these other factors. Like the job is hard enough to do on itself. And now if you're dealing with all these internal issues too within the department, now it's like, all right, where is the shining light in this thing? Because the public's tearing me apart. My own department's tearing me apart. Like you'd be getting this position where you're just ready to snap at anybody.
For sure.
And that probably is a lot of departments, but I'm very fortunate it wasn't mine.
That's great. What is something about being a cop that you've learned about civilians that most of us would never think about?
Do you mean as far as like the difference between cops and civilians?
No, being a cop, how has your eyes been open to how just humans being as a cop in that position, dealing with the negatives and being in people's homes and seeing how people live and just life? What is something that you have learned since being a cop that you never even would have thought about until you were in that position that most people would never think about?
I would have to say just how much people have going on in their lives you have no idea about. Like you could be living in a nice neighborhood and you assume everyone else has their life together. And then there could be a house down the street from you where like it's complete chaos all the time. You just never hear about it until you get sent there as a police officer, right? Like there's just this whole like subculture world, I guess you could call it, of people that are just in constant chaos. But then they present just enough to go out in public and seem like they have it together and then go back to their houses. And it's just crazy. I mean, you have people that they'll get the police called to their house like 2 or 3 times a week, every week for indefinite amounts of time. It's wild. And
that's the norm for them.
Yeah. And a lot of people go their whole lives without interacting with the police unless it's like a traffic stop or, whatever, something happens, a car accident, like normal things. But there's some people that like they're interacting with the police every single day for some reason or another. And they just live in that system. And it's just, I feel like a lot of people don't realize that, and they don't realize how much stuff is going on beneath the surface that they don't even know about.
One thing I like to ask a lot of law enforcement officers and first responders are about frequent flyers. Did you ever have a frequent flyer? Somebody that called that you just had to deal with all the time?
Yeah, too many to count.
Was there one that stood out? I feel like every cop, every first responder, they have the one person throughout their career. When you'd hear their name come over the radio, you're like, damn, or you knew the address.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I've since I've left that job so abruptly, I've tried to kind of bury that.
Yeah.
But it was all just like annoying stuff. A lot of it was domestics. Like people who would have domestic disputes, and we get called to their house over and over and over again. And each time would be the same story. And it was awful. And if we weren't getting called to their house, they were coming to the police station to try to report on the other one to like get ahead of it to cover themselves.
Just the same people doing the same domestic violence shit every single week.
It was mostly that. It was either the repeat offenders or frequent flyers were either domestics or mental health calls. We had a lot of mental health ones where sometimes they were a problem and sometimes they were just annoying. But there was ones that, I mean, we had a guy that would call the police department every single day to either thank us like over the top for our service or to call and yell and swear at us for like 20 minutes to the dispatchers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But it was just mental health. I mean, that's so much of law enforcement now is dealing with those people.
How do you guys deal with the mental health? I mean, how are you equipped to deal with a guy that's having a full mental health breakdown?
Well, we have most departments, including mine, have mental health clinicians attached to them now. They work there either part or full time. But every officer's trained in this stuff now. They have to be. You have to be trained in, these de-escalation tactics and mental health calls for service. Like there's so many different things now that I can't remember the names of them anymore, but it's such a big part of what we do that, a big part of it is you got to de-escalate the best you can and contain the situation and then know where to find the resources you need to do further stuff.
Yeah. Because
most people don't realize this, but it's not illegal to be crazy. So if you go to someone who's just crazy, they can be crazy. If they're not a danger to themselves or to somebody else, they can keep doing that. So it puts you in a tough position where you're like, this person needs help, but they're going to deny it. So what do we do? And that's where you get different entities to come in that can make those evaluations more than the cops can.
That's got to be tough.
It's very tough. And it's probably the most time consuming part about law enforcement where I worked anyway.
It's just dealing with them.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
Yeah. Because almost every call on some level is a mental health call. You know what I mean?
I guess if you break it down, yeah.
Yeah. You're dealing with people that have issues, and some of them are, mental illness, and then some of them are whatever, a culmination of lifetimes of problems that now you're dealing with, and you're doing that every day.
Every day, just up and at it again.
Yeah.
That's where I talk to a lot of law enforcement officers, and that's a big struggle for them is not being able to help certain people that they clearly need it, and they just have to cut them loose, or if they're fortunate enough, they take them to a hospital and they sober up for a day or two. Then he's like, you'll be on patrol and we'll be back out again. And it's just the same. It's just a copy repeat of some of those mental health people. And it's so sad as a country. I'll see some videos, and I saw this homeless person, like their bone was sticking out of their leg. It had healed and shrunk up around it. And I'm just like, man, that's in our streets. We have people with rotting holes in them from drug, abuse, and here these cops are just like, what do we do?
Yeah.
And the human aspect of it, just take out law enforcement and that's your job, but just being a human and watching somebody.
It wears on you for sure. It does. And it's one of those things where when you're around that stuff, whether you realize it or not, it's taking a toll on you.
For
to
sure.
be around that negative energy like that day in and day out, it permeates every part of your life.
For sure.
And you don't know it when you're in it. And like wanting to help people but not being able to, like you said, is a big part of it. I mean, we dealt with a lot of alcohol issues too, like frequent flyers. We'd have people we'd PC like 2-3 times a week, and they'd go in the hospital for a little bit, then they'd come out, and then they'd go in the hospital, then come out, and then eventually they'd die.
Ugh.
And you're just seeing this person's like downward trajectory, but there's nothing you can do about it. You get them in the facilities they need to be in, but beyond that, there's nothing you can do.
Damn. Was there a turning point in your career where an incident happened where it just kind of was an aha moment for you as far as being able to process things and bringing anything back from the military? Because I feel you have a lot of trauma that you carried over, not in a negative way, but that we just bottled and, didn't really cope with as a young man, but now you're a cop still trying to process life then. And, as your past life of the military, losing your best friend and the traumas and everything that we've gone through there, then now you're a cop. Was there an incident that it brought everything to life for you?
Yeah. Yeah, in 2018, on April 12th, 2018, Sean Gannon, who was a Yarmouth police officer, he was one of our canine officers.
Okay.
He was 32 years old at the time, and he was shot in the head as he was serving a search warrant for an offender who was on probation for violent crimes, and he was killed. And
what did that do to you?
It was tough. It rocked everybody. Sean Gannon was one of those guys that was a friend to everybody.
Okay.
The community loved him. He was part of Big Brothers, Big Sisters. He was a canine officer. He was just one of those guys, like a Nick, where it's like, how could that happen to that guy?
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't my best friend. Like I met him through the job and we were friends, but he was friends with everybody. And what happened was it was a proactive unit that was looking for this particular search warrant for this offender. And they got information that he was in a house in the neighboring town right next door to us. Okay. So they went there with the state police and with the town that it was in. It was called Barnstable. It's right next to Yarmouth, to go search for this guy They searched the whole house, couldn't find him, but they had reliable information that he was in there. So then they found an attic that was kind of like one of those attics that you need a ladder to get up to, like it like a hole in a closet. You go up there. So they ended up going up there searching. They don't find anything, but they could tell something was off. So they called Sean Gannon to the scene with his canine because he had a track dog, patrol dog. They go up in the attic. They find this like piece of insulation that looks like it's been tampered with. And then as soon as Sean goes to investigate it further, a shot rings out, and then Sean gets shot in the head and killed. And then I think 2 or 3 more shots ring out, and his canine partner Nero gets shot too. And the 2 other officers who were with him in the attic pull Sean out, get down, but then Nero's stuck up there with a bullet, like I think it was in his trachea or something. I don't want to misspeak on that, but he was still alive. And it turned into a standoff with the suspect for probably about, I don't know, 4 hours, and he eventually came out and surrendered. But it was a big turning point in my life, as I'm sure it was for everybody who was working there and everyone who knew and loved Sean. But I remember being in my cruiser when this happened, and it was April, so it was starting to be sunny and nice outside. And I'm sitting there at a school visit, and we would do school visits back then because after Sandy Hook Elementary, that horrible tragedy, police departments across the country became more proactive about being involved in schools.
Yep.
So we decided to post a cruiser up at the opening and dismissal of every school day. We have 5 schools in Yarmouth. So I was at one of them, and I'm sitting there. It's like 2:30. My shift ends at 3:30, and I'm just thinking about how I'm going to work out after work, and I'm planning the summer and all these things. And then over the radio, I hear my friend's voice. This guy, his name's Chris Van Ness, and he's like one of the most seasoned, like just solid dudes. Like this guy is, you know, he's big. He's probably like your size, and he's just that guy that you never see get rattled. And he comes over the radio and he screams, "Officer down, shots fired. Officer down, shots fired." And I just knew immediately it was serious. I mean, obviously with that statement, you know it's serious, but I knew someone was probably dead, not just wounded. And all of us on the road go back to the police station. And then we're, at this point, we didn't really know what was going on, that they were even serving that search warrant, because it was like a independent little operation. I was just working patrol.
Yep.
So they gather us all in the roll call room, and one of our detectives comes down and he says, Sean Gannon's been shot in the head and is in unknown condition at the hospital. So we all go to the hospital. The hospital's like 5 minutes from the police station. And then we find out that he's been killed. And then that started a series of events that turned into a week of, the wake and the funeral for Sean and all this stuff. But it was the second time in my life that I saw the streets of Yarmouth filled with people in support of a young man who had lost his life in the service of something greater than himself far too soon. And I marched through the streets of Yarmouth in my police uniform, surrounded by thousands of cops who were there to support him. And it was just a huge turning point in my life, because when I had dealt with that stuff earlier, like I told you, when I came home from Afghanistan as a 21-year-old, and I just drank and was just, kind of a mess. I was coming home from a war zone. This time I was like, I've been through something like this before. So how can I be useful here? Mm-hmm. How can I help somebody? How can I keep an eye out for the people that are, could potentially be spiring like I did? And, because there's a lot of guys in that department that Sean Gannon was their best friend. They went to the police academy together. They were in each other's weddings. Their wives were friends. They was like just as impactful as Nick getting killed in Afghanistan was for me. That's for them. This is their moment.
And we're not talking LA County. We're talking a small northeastern community.
You don't expect this to happen.
Rocks you guys up there.
Sean Gannon's the only police officer, if I don't want to misquote anything here, but that's ever been murdered in that region. Like, we've had other line of duty deaths, but not anybody who's been like violently murdered like that.
Okay.
And yeah, like you said, you don't expect that to happen in a town like that. Like, that is not something people go 32-year careers. Their lives are intertwined with other officers.
Never even draw a pistol.
Yeah. And now he's shot in the head and dead. And it's like, when you're in a combat zone, you signed up for combat.
For sure.
When you're working as a police officer in a town of 30,000 people, that's like, it's got some crime, but there's not shootings every day. You don't expect that to happen.
Yeah.
So it's like almost harder in a lot of ways than war is, because of the context. Like, you can make sense of war. You know what I mean? This is just like, it was just almost like too much. And then it also brings with it a massive amount of media attention, and it just brings a lot of eyeballs onto those officers and to the community. And it was really difficult. And it was for me a reminder that, you know, life is short and precious, in that you need to carry yourself accordingly. You know, you have to, like, there's a reason people always say, like, when you're talking about Nick or Sean Gannon, it's like, oh, you know, they're all the good ones die young, you know, like it's always those guys. It's always those guys. Well, it's always those guys because they put themselves in positions that other people won't put themselves in.
100%.
They're the ones who go up in that attic during a search warrant. They're the ones who volunteer to go on a deployment to a dangerous part of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So it's not a coincidence that it's those guys. So it's like, for me to see that happen again, and now I'm a very different person at this point in my life, I just was, it was like a switch flip for me. I was like, I need to be intentional with everything I do. Like, I need to carry myself in alignment with the person that I want to be. And then after that, I ended up getting promoted at work because I thought to myself, like, if I'm wearing this uniform that this guy was buried in, and his legacy is forever attached to the Yarmouth Police Department, whether he wanted it to be or not, I can never again not represent this place in a way that honors him.
For sure.
And I never forgot that. And a lot of that pride and being able to come to that conclusion so quickly, or I shouldn't say quickly, but in the midst of all that, was because of what I had gone through with Nick in Afghanistan and all that. So I had the perspective to realize how I was going to take some control of the context that this traumatic event held in my life.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be there to try to help the other people around me too, because, you know, I ended up being the head of the peer support unit on my police department.
Okay.
And, you know, I had some credibility because I had been to war twice and been in combat and all these things. So I felt like at least if I was going to come to somebody to check on them, they'd at least know I'm coming from a place of experience.
You said that obviously he's the only one that's been murdered in that region. Did that change tactics or procedures after he was shot? Do you I guess my question is, do you think things would have been handled a little bit differently if you were in more of a busier city where there was more of a threat? Do you think, I'm not saying he was complacent, I'm not saying they just went in, you know, not caring, but were there repercussions afterward due to training and rethinking did anybody go over that situation and see if things could have been done differently by maybe just letting the dog up there first? Because you see tactics are obviously different through the departments. It's not a standardized thing, because and that's the only reason I'm thinking this, because you said, you know, it's never happened before. So, you know, if this was more of a threat where you're dealing with these guys on a more common basis, would there have been different tactics, do you think?
Potentially. But I think the situation was really unique in the sense of they knew the guy that they were going after. And I don't think they ever would have guessed he'd be capable of doing something like that. So it was like a really specific situation. And I'm sure there was debriefs upon debriefs afterwards of what could we have done different, as there is with everything.
For sure.
But I think based on the information they had and what they were doing at the time, they weren't going necessarily against any procedure that they would have otherwise done.
Got it.
You know what I mean? And it just turned out in the most catastrophic way.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And I'm sure that those guys think about that every day.
For sure.
The people involved, you know.
For sure.
But that's how all these things go.
Absolutely. So let's talk about you damn near getting decapitated by a construction trailer.
Yeah. So
let's talk about this. So you're in Vegas.
Yeah.
Standing on the side of a road and you about lose your head.
Yeah. I'll start at the beginning on that one for you. Yeah. So in 2025 and 24, I applied for this organization called Haymakers for Hope. And what they do is they hold boxing events around the country. They're sanctioned USA boxing amateur fights. And they take people who have either little to no boxing experience and no records. You apply for it for whatever cause that you want to fight for, and you raise money for cancer, and then you fight another guy of your similar skill level at a venue in a city. Like we did ours in Boston.
That's pretty cool.
The reason I did it was because my friend Tom Bolander, he was a Marine, an 0311 in Vietnam from 1967 to 68. He was wounded twice, earned a Bronze Star, and he was a Quincy police officer too, retired in 2005 as a lieutenant, and he become a mentor of mine, really good friend. And he was diagnosed with mesothelioma cancer. Okay. So I was like, I've been boxing like as a hobby. I was like, I'm going to put in for this thing. And then I got picked. So now I'm focused on training for that. You have to raise a $10,000 minimum, but I wanted to like take this thing to the limit, you know? And at the same time that happened, they announced a vacancy for lieutenant in my police department.
Okay.
And there's only 3 lieutenants in my police department. So the position doesn't come around very often. Someone has to retire. And at that point, I'd been a sergeant for 6 years. So I was like, all right, this is the time. Like, I'm going to train my ass off for this. I'm going to study my ass off for the promotional process, and I'm going to get the lieutenant spot, and I'm going to win the fight. And this is going to be like how I set the tone for the rest of my year. So I was like very focused. I had these goals, and I felt like I was ready for that lieutenant spot too. And so the whole winter I'm training for that, sparring. It was hard, but it was good. I go through the lieutenant's process, did everything I possibly could, left no stone unturned, you know, hired a prep coach, everything. And I ended up not getting it. I came in second, and they were only doing one. And it was a tough process. There's a lot of qualified people that were taking it. So it wasn't like, you know, I was devastated, but the person who got it deserved it. But at the time, I was like really upset about it.
For sure.
And then I had the fight looming over my head too. So then I go do the fight, which was awesome. I ended up raising like 35 grand or something that, and then sold like another 6 grand in tickets. It was really amazing. Most of my police department went to the fight.
Cool.
Most of Quincy police went to the fight because of Tom. It was amazing. I ended up losing the fight in split decision, but there was no loser in the fight. It was awesome. The guy I fought was the guy I fought was awesome. He was super tough hockey player.
Okay.
Younger than me. Trained his ass off. He was a good dude. We became friends after. And but after all of that, I was like, I need to disconnect. Like, I need to get away from my whole life and like reevaluate what's next. So I decided to go on a solo hiking trip to Utah. I'd never been to any of the national parks. So I was like, I'm gonna fly into Vegas, rent a truck, go through Utah, go to Zion, kind of just like wherever it takes me, totally wing it, just go off either word of mouth or like, I don't know, just Google it. So I do that. I get into Vegas, I go to Zion, go to all these places where I just felt like super small in the universe, you know? Like I wanted to kind of like just to be with nature and hopefully get some sort of sign about what's next. Cause I was at a very personal and professional crossroads with that fallout of the lieutenant's thing. And just like questions of like, what's my purpose now? Like, you know, all these things. And so I do that, and then I come back to Vegas to fly home, and I'm return my rental truck, and I'm standing on the sidewalk just minding my own business at like 8 p.m. and this truck was driving by towing a trailer, and the trailer came off and went up on the sidewalk and ran me over like 40 miles an hour.
Never saw it coming?
No.
What type of trailer?
It was like a arrow board trailer, the kind you'd see on
the highway, yellow flashing arrow pointing.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
it was one of those, and it was
okay.
It was stored when they transport those. They store them in a horizontal position.
Yeah, everything folds down flat.
Folds down. So that I was standing there on my phone or something, and this thing came detached and went up on the sidewalk and just hit me right in the face. That flat part.
Holy shit! It
hit me right here and fractured my skull and knocked me unconscious and broke like every bone in my face. And I remember very little from it, but I remember being on the sidewalk and somebody saying to me, "You've been struck," and then just like blacking out. And then I remember being in the hospital and the police standing over me and asking me like next to kin questions, you know. I'm like, so I'm thinking I'm going to die. And they had shut down the strip at that point, treating it like as a potential crime scene because if I did die. And it just it started this whole series of events that they ended up finding my police ID in my wallet and then called my department, got my mom's information, called her. At that time, it's like 2 a.m. East Coast. So she gets a call from an unknown Las Vegas number, doesn't answer, thinking it's like spam. And then she's right after that gets a call from my police department, one of my lieutenants telling her what happened. And then Vegas calls back. And now she's hearing that I'm in unknown critical condition across the country in a Vegas hospital.
Your poor mom, bro.
Yeah. So she ends up flying out with my friend John, who accompanies her to help her. And then my other friend Sam, who lived in San Diego, drove up when he heard about it. And I was in the ICU for 3 days, I think, and then the regular hospital for 4 days. And then I flew home with my eye stitched up and face just completely smashed. And then I had to have reconstructive facial surgery on May 30th. So the accident happened on May 18th, 2025. Then I had reconstructive facial surgery on May 30th, 2025. And then I just went into this recovery period. And, you know, I had a massive concussion and a traumatic brain injury I'm still dealing with.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'd say at the least.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a miracle that I survived it all. And I got home and my whole life was just dealing with this and healing. And I'm out of work. It happened off duty, so it's not a line of duty thing. So I'm just burning all my sick time, all my vacation time. Both the unions at my place donated a bunch of sick days to me to help me out. And in the process of all of that, I just came to the realization that I couldn't be a police officer anymore. Between the traumatic brain injury, the face full of titanium plates, the trauma, I just couldn't do it. And it was a really tough decision. But I came to peace knowing that that decision was made for me.
Okay.
You know, like I couldn't do it. And it was hard. It was hard for a guy like me to admit that. You know, for 20 years, you're this guy who runs towards danger, you know, wears a uniform, is out there protecting people as best you can. And then to be like, I can't do this anymore. Was very difficult. And like, I had no intention of leaving the job. But the only solace I could find in it was knowing that it wasn't my choice. That choice was made for me when this trailer
For sure.
crushed my face and skull.
For sure. Damn, man. So that was a pretty rough time processing that. I mean, it's got to be a horrible situation too, because here you are, your life's set. You got your career. You're just doing your time, try to get promoted to lieutenant. Life's great for you. Then all of a sudden, at the blink of an eye, you get taken out, and then now you're okay. Now what?
Yeah.
Can't be a cop anymore. Well, what's next? It's not like you're preparing. I mean, you don't have some side hustle business that's booming. And you're like, okay, I guess I can focus on this. You went from thriving to losing everything in the blink of an eye. That's got to be a pretty hard one to swallow.
It was really scary. And it was, you know, wondering if I'm ever going to be the same again. Because when you have a head injury like that, there's symptoms that appear as time goes on.
For sure.
You know, like I'm not the same person I was at all before that accident. You know, from the outside, it might seem to people that I'm fine, but like it's very difficult still.
What's changed? If you're cool with sharing it.
Yeah. I mean, the PTSD from having that violent near-death experience, is very difficult. Like I have a really hard time sleeping. I have headaches constantly because of the trauma to my head.
For sure.
And just a lot of things, you know, your view of life after that is completely different. You know, it's like, I keep going back to comparing everything to Afghanistan, but when you're in war, you're expecting to be surrounded by danger. When you're minding your own business on a sidewalk and almost die in a very violent, traumatic way, like it's just so random. It's hard not to look at life completely differently after that. And trying to find who you are again after that, and after that identity of being a police officer, and like not only the identity of it, because I was never too strongly attached to it, but the purpose it gave, and also like your whole network of people that was surrounded by that job. You know, like I have friends that aren't cops, of course, a lot of friends, but that is a part of your world. Like that is something you're a part of. That's the camaraderie of it, all that stuff. And then you're just like that, you're just out of it. And they were all there for me. Yeah. Like they supported me immensely. But I knew that I couldn't do that job anymore. And I felt completely different than I did before.
Was it just I mean, clearly the brain injuries and stuff, but there's no other position not another position they can move you to keep you on? Or was this your decision? Like, hey, I have to leave from this.
It was never a conversation, because it was, to answer your question, really, there is no other position, you know, within a department like that to move me to. And also it was never a conversation either. And I couldn't, even the stress of that would be too much for me.
You think?
After going through that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The post-traumatic stress from that is something that I'll be dealing with for a really long time. And
what are your triggers for your PTSD? I mean, like, what is it that you're struggling with?
I suppose like just feelings of impending doom, you know, like something's coming for you. Like that's a lot of what the anxiety comes from. And it's just like, it's hard to place it. You go through something like that and it shows up in weird ways that you don't expect. Okay. And yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you, but it's hard to explain. And it's still an ongoing thing, you know. It was almost, what's today, the 12th? It was almost a year ago, in 6 days from now. So
it's still fresh.
Oh yeah. And for months of that, I was incapacitated. And then when I say incapacitated, like I wasn't doing anything. Right. And then I started like living again. So then you're like learning new things about yourself. And then with each new thing you learn about yourself, you realize how different things are. So you feel more different It's almost like the more things get back to normal, the more you realize how not normal they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then now it's just been a continuation of that. And it's just, yeah, it's been a lot. And I'm just super grateful to be alive at all and not worse off.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's got to be a pretty tough transition too. Just, you're still, I mean, there's going to be things down the road years from now that you're going to maybe never even relate to that incident, just from the traumatic side of everything happening and how fast your life just changed. What was the biggest lesson that you've taken from all this?
That this isn't a dress rehearsal.
Like one shot at it.
If you want, yeah. Like I think to say that living every day is your last is kind of silly. Like that puts so much pressure on you, but you got to live this life as though it's your last, because there's no second chances at this. And if you want to do something, you have to go do it. And I understand people have responsibilities, families and stuff, but you have to do everything you can to maximize your time you have on this earth, because it is not long and it can be taken away from you at any moment, completely against your will.
For sure.
And, I had gone out to Utah to hike in nature to get a sign from the universe. And then I got one with this that sent my life in a completely different trajectory. And now I'm just trying to make the best of it,
Which is what?
I don't know yet.
Okay, yeah.
I'm doing this documentary.
Yeah.
And before all this happened, I was a writer too. I actually wrote a book about my time in Afghanistan based around a journal. It's called Summer 2009, A Journey of Self-Discovery Amidst the Afghanistan War. And then I had another book that I was working on that was kind of a follow-up to that was probably like 90% done. And then this happened. And then once I was well enough, I wrote all about this experience. So now that's all in this new book that's going to be coming out in probably about 2 months. And then
you want to drop the name of it?
Yeah, it's called Somewhere in Between.
Okay.
And kind of the concept is like, it's 20 years of uniform service. The story is starting from 18 years old to 38 years old, where my career abruptly ended.
Yeah.
And in that entire time, the lessons you learn, like I felt like I was somewhere in between that grunt in the desert in Afghanistan and everything afterwards.
Yep.
And you're trying to sort through that, and you could say that about any person who deployed. And it all culminated in this accident happening. And now it's like I'm out in the world without the identity of the Marine Corps, without the uniform of a police officer. So like, who am I? What is this life? What do I want it to be? What kind of person do I want to be?
Yeah.
And how do I navigate all this new trauma too, and this new challenges I'm dealing with? So it's a, I guess, exciting time in some ways for me, just because everything is kind of like reset, but it's also really difficult in the sense of I did like my previous life too.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I escaped something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's the different part with you.
Yeah.
Versus talking with a lot of guys, they take that opportunity to run because they hated it. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, it changed my life so much better. But you're over here going, man, I was thriving, loved my career, was crushing my job, and then gone at the blink
But
of an eye.
it also sends me out into the world with this perspective I never would have had. You know what I mean? So now if I go back and like want to, I don't know, give back to law enforcement in some way, I'm not coming from a place as someone who left the job on a sour note and now is trying to go back and like give people advice. It's like, all right, well, if you loved it so much, you could have just stayed in it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm just trying to figure out where this all fits into my world now. In the documentary, that's another huge part of my purpose now.
And this all started since being hurt?
Yeah. I mean, I had ideas to do it for a long time, but I never had the time.
Okay.
And now that I have the time, that's kind of my mission is I want to tell Nick's story so people know who he was, what he sacrificed. And, his story represents a whole generation of Marines that fought in that global war on terror. And, Nick was the best of us, but as was all these casualties in those wars. And they all have a story. And I think seeing Nick's and everything around it and who he was and what it turned into and what it did for people is really important. And I want to tell that story, so that, I mean, my only goal with this whole documentary is that the whole world knows who he was and what he sacrificed and what he meant to so many people.
Good for you for doing that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. It's very overwhelming because I'm not a filmmaker, but I guess you could say I am now.
You are now. At least you could check that box.
Yeah.
So.
But I'm figuring out as I go, and I'm doing it with a friend of mine. His name's Quinn Smith. He is a filmmaker. What's that?
He's a Marine too?
No, he went to high school with Nick and I. He played
I'll think of Q. Was there another guy?
Q, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
This is Quinn. He's my, I guess you'd call him director of photography. But
okay.
He's like the expert behind everything. I'm like the story guy.
Got it.
And we're just traveling around the country now. going to all these different locations to interview the people that tell this story. And like Dom, he was one of them. That's why I was in Utah. Q, I was in Orlando doing his. And a lot of it is by the time this comes out, it'll be almost 20-year contrast of all of us in that time frame of, approximately 21 years old to 20 years later. Like, what does it mean now? Nick, when he called home from Afghanistan, one of the last things he said to his mom was, "Don't worry about me, I'm living the dream." And then died shortly after that. On his gravestone at the Bourne National Cemetery, it says "living the dream" on his gravestone. So now I'm like, okay, what does living the dream mean all these years later? Like, we were living the dream when we were in that desert at 21 years old. We all wanted to be there. Every single one of us wanted to be there. We were volunteers. And now, all these years later, what does that mean to us? What does living the dream look like? What is Nick's legacy? What is everyone who was killed in those wars? What does it mean to the people who fought in it? And I think that's a really important story to tell and to show really the weight and the impact just one of those killed in action between Iraq and Afghanistan has, and how it affects so many people for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. And then you get to take that time now and sit down individually and highlight who Nick was through his friends, through his family, through guys in his vehicle.
Yeah. And they say like,
what a cool thing.
There's countless versions of you that exist because everyone who meets you meets a different version of you.
Oh my God, that's the most real. That's real shit right there.
Because you're perceived differently. Like, you meet me, you have a perception of me, and Dom sees me as a perception of me. So to tell Nick's story through these people that he served with and was friends with, you get to learn things about him that people would never know because it's these personal connections in the lens through which they knew this person, right? Like, I never knew Nick as a Marine. I knew Nick as like, he was a Marine, but we just partied in Wilmington. I never served with him.
Yeah.
We weren't in the same battalion. We weren't in the same platoon. I never knew what kind of leader he was. I didn't know how he reacted when he was in combat. I don't know any of these things. So, but Dom does. Q does. These guys who served with him were with him up until his last moments, and they know who he was and they can share those stories.
What's been one of your favorite things of hearing about Nick that you didn't know?
I knew this, but I never directly heard it. But the fact that he left his battalion and went into 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines weeks before they were going on deployment. They had already trained. They all knew each other. They'd all deployed to Iraq to each other. Gets inserted in there as a corporal, a leadership position, and then goes there and gets made a vehicle commander and is just like, that had to have been so intimidating and overwhelming that only a guy like Nick
would thrive in
could do that. Like, when I was in the Marine Corps, I was not a standout Marine at all. Like, I just tried to get by. I did my best, but I wasn't like a guy like Nick knew exactly who he was and what he wanted to do in life. And it showed in everything, in the way he treated people. And he had this thing about him where people gravitated to him and he could make any situation seem manageable. And he just was that guy. And I never got to see him in that element. And now I'm kind of like meeting him all over again, almost through all these stories and all these people. And it's all these years later. And, I almost just died in this horrific accident. So like, I'm reevaluating, what does living the dream mean to me? And in the process, going back and like looking at all this stuff with this new perspective, that's not like a poor us, these veterans, we went through this thing and, whatever. That's like, no, we were living the dream then and we're living it now.
Absolutely.
And we want to share this story about, like, if you were a warrior back then, why aren't you one now?
That's
you see
what
these
kills
veterans
me,
who they just fixate on this one period of their life. They did 4 years voluntarily. And then they kind of, I don't want to say cry about it the rest of their life, but it just becomes their only identity. And it's like, okay, well, two things. If you loved it so much, you could have stayed in. People do 20 years if they want to.
Yep.
And secondly, like, all right, but what have you done since then? Like, how do you serve now in your community? How do you serve your family, your friends? Like, you think just because that ended, those standards don't get held the rest of your life? They do if you choose to. And if you choose not to, then what did that all mean to begin with? Right? Like, if a guy like Nick died and me or Dom or Q or any of these guys that he served with just spent the rest of their life moping about it, like, what does that do for Nick's legacy, his memory? Like, Nick wouldn't have done that. So how do you not have that same mentality? If you were a warrior back then, why aren't you now? And you got to figure that shit out. You got to unpack it. And if that means getting help, going to therapy, whatever it is, you got to do it in order to function in life. Because if you don't, then I don't know, what is the point of any of it?
And that's where it really, not confuses me, but in a way where it's like, man, you were this war fighter. You were this peak Marine at your time, or soldier, whatever it may be, for such a little micro chapter of your life. But that's what dictates the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because these guys get so consumed into the identity of being a veteran or a law enforcement officer that they never know how to evolve. They never know how to grow from there into something else. Like my wife will say it. She's like, she's like, I've divorced and remarried 5 different versions of you in our relationship. And we should constantly be changing, constantly being closing a chapter, starting a whole new one. Dude, I'm in my 40s and we just walked away from everything. Like our whole fleet is torched if we're going to refer to anything, and burn the ships. We've started life all over. I don't know how many times, but these guys get so fixated on this stuff. And like we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier with survivor's remorse. And it's like, bro, it's been 20 years. Do you think your boy wants you living like this for so long? That's how I try to talk to some of the guys that I help. It's like, dude, my best friend died. Dude, I started a charity in remembrance of him. We've helped thousands of veterans and end up helping thousands of cops and all kinds of stuff because I wanted to honor his name. He didn't get a chance to live out any of his wishes. So I was like, dude, I'm doing this in his name. And it ended up being something incredible. That's when I talk to these guys. I'm like, yeah, dude, your boy died. He signed that dotted line doing something that we all signed up for. Live for him now.
Yeah, completely.
Cool, dude. He got hit 20 years ago. You're still acting like this. You're still letting it get to you this bad. It's because they sit and they dwell and they fix, and that's their identity. It's like, what's the new identity? How do we become a better dad? Let's not just be a disgruntled veteran our whole lives. That's not a cool title to represent anymore. There was a little era, I guess, toward the die down of the war where there was a bunch of disgruntled vets and all that shit. Cool. Nobody wants it anymore. You're an asshole. Your kids hate you. You've been on your 3rd or 4th marriage. Time to start thinking what's next. Let's start changing our mindset hey man, I'm going to start this career. Now I'm going to start work on this. I'm going to go back to school. You know what? I'm going to actually give up drinking, get healthy again. You talk to all these guys, all these dudes, they all want to talk about being war fighters. Like, bro, you're 250 pounds, can't even run a 100-yard sprint.
Yeah. What happened?
Oh, well, Afghan 2007.
Yeah.
Fucking how long ago? Right? I get it. I'm not downplaying the losses and the trauma and everything that all of our veterans and our service members, everybody have been through. I'm not throwing shade on any of it, but it's who are we living for now? Especially if you're still dwelling on the guys that we lost. And that's why I love what you're doing for Nick, because imagine all the guys that have gone through a healing process that just do something in remembrance of one of their boys they lost. Look at how many cool programs, documentaries, little docu-series, all this stuff from the few that do it. Imagine if you sat there and be like, okay, dude, lost my boy. What can I do in remembrance of his name?
Yeah.
Even if it's just a march across country, or you're going to go climb a mountain peak, do it and plant a flag at the top of some mountain with your boy's name on it. Bring a little plaque, carve on a rock, whatever it is, but do something to okay, I'm going to remember him. This was his favorite spot. Dude, him and I in high school used to go here and Roy's and Muck. Go back there and do something for him. But instead of dwelling and soaking in your sorrows and woe is me for 20 years, it's like, dude.
When you live in survivor's guilt like that, after a certain point, you're just making it about yourself because you're just fixating on your role in the person's death. Yeah. And it's like, Nick's little brother, Alex, he just had his first son probably at this point, like 2 months ago.
Okay.
Right. And when his son is old enough to ask, who was my Uncle Nick I never met, he can show him this documentary. And I want like Dom's daughter, when she's old enough to watch this and say, my dad was a fucking warrior at one point and look at what he's doing now. He's a firefighter. He's a part of a community, and you can say about everyone who's in this documentary, like I want to show like it doesn't end there. And if you let it end there, what does that say about the person that never got a chance, who's forever 21?
For sure.
Like who's forever stuck in that moment. And now you're going to willingly be stuck in that moment when that person had no choice. Mm-hmm. And that's like, it's a super important narrative to me. I think there's been a lot of, especially with the GWAT veteran demographic, a lot of acceptance almost where people get painted as these like victims of these like unjust wars or something. And it's like, okay, first of all, everyone there was volunteer. There's no draft.
For sure.
Right. And then second of all, yes, people have problems, but it's like you said, you're fixating on something that was almost 20 years ago. Like what else is there in between all of that? There's other stuff too, and you got to deal with it. And if you don't, it's It's a weakness.
Hey, you ask him that. We're like, okay. And this is a perfect example. I was dealing with a guy a couple years ago, and we're on a trip. He sent me an email. He's going to kill himself. He's struggling. I'm like, okay, cool. Get him on a trip. I move a guy off of a trip, put him on it. And we're on this, we're talking, we're on a river and asking him questions. And when it happened, and he's like, yeah, and it was 20 years at that point. But he's talking about it like it was last year.
Yeah.
He just lost his boy. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, 20 years. And this is the point. This is where you've gotten to in 20 years. This isn't about your buddy anymore.
No.
This isn't about the VA. This isn't about your military service and the struggles you've been through. This is about you. You've now somehow sculpted this depression, this horrible time that you went through has now become your identity. And that's why I'm so big on pushing dudes to find their new identity. Okay, cool. What's your purpose? What's your identity? If you cannot identify that, you're in that realm. You're really susceptible to being sucked into the depression, the drinking, everything else that comes with the woe is me mentality, because that's your mindset now. And it's like, you think your boy's going to sit there? Like I talked to buddies of mine. I'm like, do you think our boys want us fucking acting like this?
No.
They would have talked so much shit. Like, bro, what are you doing? Get the fuck up. Go do something with your life. Go be a better dad. Go quit drinking. Go work on your relationship. Go find a relationship with God. Go have a conversation with. Do something except for dwelling on that, because that's all it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the fact that you're doing this for Nick. I feel like I know Nick just from the years of knowing Dom, and it's weird putting all these pieces together, because I've heard your name, Q, and all these other guys, and it's interesting to be able to see the dynamic, and that's as an outsider, I look, I'm like, this is badass.
Yeah,
good for you. Like,
appreciate that, man.
Imagine if one dude from every unit just like, man, I'm going to do something in remembrance of the guys we lost. And a lot of guys do. There's a lot of reunions, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but you see all those guys come together and they'll all pour one out for the homie, have a drink and remember them and laugh and cry and whatever it is. But that's healthy. But it's these guys that just get in that mindset, and then it just becomes their identity to be a disabled vet. It's like, dude,
it's terrible.
That's your accomplishment. That's what you want your kids. Oh, my dad was a Iraq veteran. Fuck that, bro. Look at all of our parents, what they had to deal with, the Vietnam vets. I don't want to be that dad.
No. And you got to take control of the context that stuff holds in your life too. Because at the same time, you're also, romanticizing it as always the best days of your life, but it's also
the worst days of your life.
Dictated the rest of your life to, it just doesn't really make sense. And I think everybody has to take that journey, whatever it is. Like, some people have different strengths and weaknesses, but I think if you're unwilling to get help when you need it, then there's almost no hope, really.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say no hope, but it's going to be a very long road. Because if you're not willing to
the
admit,
longer you're out of it, the harder it is to pull
because
out.
if you're not going to admit that you are part of the problem, like a big part of the problem, then you're never going to get anywhere. If you're blaming other people and having this victim mentality, it's going to be your whole life.
100%. We see it every day.
Yeah. And it's just, we all need help in life with something. Everybody gets a break somewhere. Everybody has someone who helps them at some critical juncture of their life that either changes the trajectory of it or opens their eyes to something they didn't know. But everybody does it at some point, whether they realize it or not. So to not take the help that's offered to you, you're just at that point, you're being a victim with this self-imposed isolation.
Yeah, I refer to it a lot as the varsity captain of the football team that graduates and he's still wearing his Letterman jacket at the town bar.
Totally.
It's the same concept. Like, I served Iraq 03 to 05. It's like, what do you do now? Oh, well, it's been tough. I've been struggling. You've been struggling for 20 years?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so dude, I struggle, but I'm like, okay, fuck, how do I get out of here? How do I change? What's next? How do I fix this? Let's get ourselves back on the rails and headed down the track. That,
the difficult balance is all these years later, you're like, I'm talking about it. I'm writing books about it. I'm trying to make a documentary about it. So it becomes difficult because you don't want to be known as that guy who's living in the past either, right? But it depends on what you're doing with all of it. Like Absolutely. With your nonprofit that you started, like you're turning into something productive. And if guys like you and I, and not to sound arrogant or anything, don't speak up and show that message, then who is going to? Like I get asked to speak at like a Veterans Day thing, and the me from 10 years ago be like, oh, I'm not doing that. Like I don't want people to. That's not the image I want. But now I'm like, okay, why not me? If I can give a message that might help somebody, why would I not want to do that?
I'm with you.
Yeah. And it's hard because you don't want to put yourself out there like that. But if you don't do it, then who's going to? If good veterans don't speak up, who is going to?
And at the same time, we've had enough time to mature. At least for me, when I got out of Mercury, I hated absolutely hated the Marine Corps. Uniforms in a box, everything went away. I have no moto tats, like nothing, wanted nothing to do with it. Now it's like, okay, even though we take the political environment and why we were there fighting wars and all that stuff. But anyways, I look back and I'm like, man, that was one of the greatest eras of my life. Some of the best friends I've ever made in my life. I have my wife and kids because of that chapter in my life, but that was a chapter.
Exactly.
And
like, what's
now,
the next one?
And now, what's the next? And that's, I talk about it when around Marines or buddies and stuff, like we'll talk about those days. But other than that, it's like, cool, dude, I have kids. They're entrepreneurs. We homeschool, have a podcast and a bakery. Like that's what I talk about now. Obviously when you go back with the boys and everybody reunions and gets back, you're going to be in that world and talk about all that stuff. And it's healthy to bring up, because you don't want to forget. And then, I'll have buddies come over, they'll bring up stories. My wife's like, oh my God, I've never heard that story. I'm like, yeah, I forgot about that. And those are cool moments to be able to reflect and go back. It's just like the high school days. Or boot camp, but now it's like, okay, let's move on. Let's start something new and start better in our lives. And that's incredible what you're doing.
That book that I was telling you about, that's Somewhere in Between, that's about all of that stuff, because it started as just a war story, but then it turned into this, like, I could see how the pieces of the puzzle fit together that created that 20-year journey that ended with this, accident that changed my whole life. And now I'm into the unknown once again. Like I'm again in that position where I left Camp Lejeune, had no idea what I was going to do, but now I have all of that experience behind me. So it's like, oh no, I'm not, like, I'm going into this new chapter with all of that in my toolbox, and I'll figure it out one way or the other. Right. Like like you said, it always, that Marine Corps time might've been some of the hardest of your life, but it dictates everything else. Like you have that to fall back on, even when I woke up the next morning after that accident and I didn't know if I was going to live or die. I remember thinking to myself, like, I got through all this other stuff. I can get through this. And that foundation all started with the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm. And it's use it and be proud of it and rock it. But new identities, man, I'm big into it. That's why I commend you, man. Good for you.
I really appreciate that.
It's pretty incredible. I wish more guys were doing stuff like that, and just to remember their boys. It doesn't need to be a full documentary that you're going to be at the Sundance Festival stuff, but just putting pictures together, gathering all the photos in the barracks and, in the back of vehicles and in the field ops. There's a lot of cool shit out there, especially your guys there had more GoPros, or at least were coming out more than when we were there. But yeah, there's a lot of cool shit. Document it all. Make something out of it.
Yeah. And it's like, I just want to share this story and what, Nick meant to me and so many other people. Like I was just a average Marine. I was in Afghanistan, was in a few firefights, nothing crazy. I saw combat, but I'm not saying it was, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam or anything, but my experience was my experience, and it shaped my whole life. And now I'm just trying to turn it into something productive and share who my friend was, who meant so much to me and so many other people.
Good for you. If there was a word of advice, any word of advice for anybody listening that's gone through a pretty hard time, I guess I'll get to the question, but you've gone through a lot. Instead of you got out of the Marine Corps quick after deployment, started a whole new life, built an incredible career as a law enforcement officer, which was ripped out from underneath you. And you could have spiraled in a million different ways. You could have gone the drug and alcohol way, the angry, abusive, whatever it may have been. But you took this opportunity, like, okay, I'm going to do something with this time and I'm going to turn it into something productive and remembrance of a buddy. What would be advice for people that come to a crossroad in their life and they think that it's just, holy shit, I lost everything?
I would say be who you say you are, right? Like when I came home and I talked about that NAMV I got with the letter from my company commander, that reminded me of this person that I was. And if you're going to live with those ideals that you were once a Marine or you were once this or one that, you got to be that person still. You know what I mean? And then you got to be that person all the time. And I would also just say, keep moving forward. Like no matter what, find some small goal, accomplish it, then on to the next one, then on to the next one. And it will accumulate and start turning into big things.
Micro wins.
Yeah, totally. But you got to figure out who you are and be true to that and have a compass in life. And, you talk a lot about identities and starting new chapters. What gives you the ability to do that is having a good sense of who you are and what your compass is, because then no matter what you do, you're not going to go wrong.
Yep.
If you want to be a police officer, if you want to be a entrepreneur, if you want to be whatever, as long as you know who you are and the direction that you want to go, everything else is going to follow with that. You have to live intentionally. You have to be
Absolutely.
intentional about everything you do in every aspect of your life, because there's no time to waste. As corny as that sounds.
You ain't lying, man. Life is quick. You deal with enough death or have enough close calls, you realize how vulnerable, how precious, how fragile we are as human beings, and how blink of an eye, the whole world can change.
Yeah. No, life's crazy and unpredictable, but you only get one of them.
Absolutely. Dude,
Appreciate it, brother.
I appreciate this conversation.
Yeah.
Didn't know how it was going to go, where we are going to go with it, but that was a great chat.
Yeah, that was
I'm glad I get to know a little bit about you.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story, man. I'm really excited to see how all this turns out for you. I'm